Hello and welcome to the MinnMax Show, a place about games, friends, and getting better. I'm Ben Hansen and I'm joined by Kyle Hilliard.
Just getting that energy up.
Hey man, I love it. How about the moon energy is what we're talking about in this episode of the podcast. We got Suriel Vasquez. Well,
all the energy.
Discord doesn't like that, but we do. And we have Janet Garcia.
Oh.
There it is. Hot damn. We got a lot to cover in this episode of the MinnMax Show. Too much, actually, for this week. And so what we're doing is there's going to be 2 episodes of the podcast this week. On this episode, we're talking about Knockout City, Final Fantasy Origin, very confusingly, Biomutant, SteamPal, Miitopia, Shin Megami Tensei 3, and then a bunch of great community questions. But if you're listening to this and screaming, why aren't they talking about Horizon Forbidden West and other announcements? We are getting to those in another episode of the podcast that'll be airing later on Thursday, because we're recording this before Sony's State of Play. So we'll have a bonus episode this week without community questions, just kind of a shorter one to kind of recap all of Thursday's news, because it seems like Thursday is ready to pop, as they say in the biz. But for this one, we just have too many games that we need to get off our chest. We need to talk about here. Knockout City seems to be maybe the most interesting. Maybe that's not true, but certainly worth talking about. This is the dodgeball game. They revealed it on, was it a Nintendo Direct or like Nintendo, third-party partner stream, whatever the hell they call that. And it had the kind of confusing trailer where it looked like it was going to be a mashup of a bunch of different art styles. It kind of had like an Incredible style intro where it's like, okay, they have like Call of Duty characters talking with pretty princess characters. What is this? And then it comes out and it's just a dodgeball game. But then the twist is that it's a very surprisingly solid dodgeball game that's available on everything, and there's crossplay. Kyle, have you got a chance to check out Knockout City yet?
No, I haven't. I want to. Is it free? This is like a dumb question that I should know the answer to.
Great question. Janet, is it free?
It's on Game Pass. So it's as free as it can be without being free, but it's currently in a free window. I think by the time y'all might be listening to it, that may be over, because there's 4 days left at the time of this recording for that window of it being free.
And it's cross-platform or no?
Yeah. Crossplay.
Okay.
All unlocked. The gates are open.
So I can play it on Xbox. Kid can play on Switch.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have a great time.
Yes.
Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. There are some things.
That is what we are proposing.
Yes. There's kind of like crews, which are like kind of like guilds. And I guess those aren't working for searching. We streamed this recently for New Show Plus, by the way. You can check it on our YouTube channel. And so that's not working. But as far as I can tell, it seems like the crossplay is working really well. But yeah, Janet, like you mentioned, it is the wild thing of getting out of the gate and saying for the first 10 days this game is out, it is free as a trial on every system, which I think is an incredibly smart move. It's like they realize that for a multiplayer focused game like this, you need to get out and hopefully just have a sliver of that impact of like a Fall Guys. Just, we need to make some sort of splash. And I feel like EA, who is publishing Knockout City, has really learned a lot of lessons from last year when they tried to release Rocket Arena. And it was like, well, it's, you got to pay for it, but then maybe we'll have some free weekends later on. And then it's only $5, everybody. But by then it was kind of too late. And I don't know how well Rocket Arena is doing right now. So even though Knockout City is still a paid game, I think it's a very smart mad dash out of the gate to try and drum up attention. But then the good news is that the gameplay can actually back it up, right, Janet? Are you enjoying this thing?
Yeah, it's pretty solid. It's funny because I've kind of jumped between whether or not this is going to be something that's fully going to rope me in. I do think it's a good game. I've thought that since I originally played it during like its alpha or beta period. It had like a small window after the announcements. And I was like, oh, this is like very solid. I think it has like great mechanical depth to it, but I don't know if it's going to, rope me in because I'm not a multiplayer or online person. Like the amount of times I've played online, I can probably still count on both my hands. Wait, I'm talking to someone and playing a game.
Well, what the hell? You're like a big Splatoon 2 person, right?
Yeah, but like, it's Nintendo. You don't talk to strangers on a Nintendo console. Sure, the like talking thing. You get in, you keep your head down, hopefully not the whole time, and that's it. So I haven't done a lot of
close your eyes, take your hands off the contrler, and just let God take you into the match.
Nintendo
just let it go. But
go.
At the same time, it's funny because we played for the stream. And my boyfriend's pretty into it, and he was playing with his friends, and I was watching him play, and I'm like, I kind of want to get in there and play myself. So I don't know, it might pull me in, to be honest.
Yeah, it sneaks up on you where it starts out and it's like, okay, this feels pretty good to play, dodgeball, I think I got it. And then some of like the finer details start to build up of like, okay, you can turn yourself into a ball and then throw a partner or be thrown. And then if that human ball hits a person, then they're dead or knocked out immediately compared to a normal dodgeball, which takes 2 hits. And then there's stuff like dodging. You can dodge into the balls instead of just catching them at just the right time. Like there's enough details and kind of finesse there, the different styles of throwing, that it really starts overlapping in a beautiful way, where by the end of that stream, I was really surprised, like, oh, wait a minute, we're all having a surprisingly good time. It really will sneak up on you.
Pro-level athletes by the end.
Oh, we were basically unstoppable taking on the MinnMax community. But Kyle, you will like it. No questions asked, because it has a glider in it.
Oh, okay, I'm in. Let me just download it right now.
I really think you'll like it. It's really smart.
Yeah, I don't know what I was doing there. No, I want to check it out. It's dodgeball is a sneaky video game staple. Like you know what I mean? Like there was one on Game Boy Advance. I remember those really big, weirdly, and like NES and stuff. And it's always that game that everyone's like, yeah, no, it's that old dodgeball game was super fun, but it's not like a genre or a type of sports game that's at the forefront of my mind ever, you know?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Yeah, it turns out, it's just a very basic idea where like they throw you into the game pretty quickly, and then there's a tutorial later on that you can go through. And like I think that speaks to the simplicity of it's dodgeball. You get the idea. You can catch the ball, you can throw the ball, have at it. But there's still a lot more going on there. But yeah, it's from Velan Studios, who was founded from the creators of Vicarious Visions a while ago. And their last game was Mario Kart Live Home Circuit. And so they've been on a surprisingly solid streak here. That's kind of the theme of Knockout City and Velan Studios is, surprisingly solid in so many ways. But I think it speaks also to like EA having a pretty good 2021 so far. Like this is kind of the EA partners thing, just like It Takes Two, which is also a game you picked up and played and was like, oh, this feels really good. And oh my God, this constant variety. And then even Mass Effect Legendary Edition seems like they got a lot of that Mass Effect goodwill back. It's kind of...
can we admit that EA is kind of good? Like, I feel like that's very controversial to put out there because people are so continuously annoyed at the microtransaction approaches in especially their, marquee sports titles. And I get that. I can't relate to it because I'm not someone that even plays in that way. Again, very local, very campaign. For some reason, despite being very young, I'm super old school with that. I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm playing my game. I'm by myself. But yeah, they put out a lot of good stuff, and they have I think they're really good at also assessing talent. I think EA Originals in of itself too, speaking of, having It Takes Two, which is an EA original, but it's kind of that indie AA space. Like they have a pretty solid eye for stuff, and it doesn't always hit, but a lot of great stuff comes out of EA. I'm so bummed that EA Play is its own thing and not part of E3 this year too.
Right. Yeah, all that stuff is still confusing to me about what is part of what else. But I mean, even Rocket Arena last year, I think was solid. It just didn't quite find that audience and didn't have me sticking with it for one reason or another. But
it's interesting because it feels like, recently we heard about, Ubisoft shifting to we're only making incredibly large games. We're going even bigger and making fewer games. And Activision is kind of leaning into that model. But I also wonder that because EA is one of the oldest publishers, they've been around for forever. So it almost seems like, I don't want to say that they're ahead of the curve, but they're far enough in that timeline where they're we have our mega hits. FIFA Ultimate Team will make sure that everyone on our we have a payroll covered for the next decade or something. So as detritus from how much money they have from that, it's just we can fund these kind of more interesting projects and work with developers that are kind of smaller. And I'm curious to see if after whatever gambits Ubisoft and Activision throw and see what comes of it, if they don't eventually shift to let's maybe figure out some smaller projects and try to fund some outside developers. And that'll be the cyclical thing because EA, back in 09, 010 with Riccatello, was sort of doing let's do some interesting projects. Let's get those Mirror's Edges, those Dead Spaces made and partner with Japanese developers and stuff to make some interesting projects. So I'm wondering if we're not going to see that trend come back a little bit after everyone's no, we have to hunker down and try to make a mega hit if this is the next phase of that.
Right. Yeah. And thinking about Activision, it was weird that it seemed like they were maybe going a little bit more in that direction with Sekiro, which now just feels like such an outlier of what was that Activision internal push that allowed that to happen. We're just like, for this brief window, Activision's like, let's find a really cool partner externally and fund them. Okay, great. Here's this one game, no DLC, moving on. But yeah, if EA can just keep the kind of smaller projects outreach going, I think it's a good relationship there. Knockout City, everybody. There's probably still time to play it for free to find out if you like it. But I don't know, Janet. Do you have any predictions for where Knockout City is going to be like end of this year?
I have no idea. If I have to bet on it, I'm going to say better than we initially thought, but not like a banger. Like, I don't think it's going to hit Fall Guys level. No. I don't think it's going to hit Rocket League level. Though also, you know, as fans have pointed out, like it took years for Rocket League to be the Rocket League we think of today. So, yeah, I think that's kind of where it's going to land. I think it will have relevancy. I think we'll be talking about it for game award stuff. Yeah. But it's hard to say how much that $20 price point too puts people off to wanting to try it if they didn't hit the 10-day trial. And I do think that there's depth there, but I don't know if there's enough like variety within strategy within that depth to create long-lasting intrigue. I'd be interested to see what does like a pro level Knockout City player look like, and what kind of strategies are they implementing versus like, you know, me who isn't pro level, because I think that it's going to live or die on whether or not there can be that meta fleshed out. Like I'm not the person that's going to be able to do that, and I can't really see how that'll play out, but I'm sure other talented players will dig into that.
They have a tournament on the schedule. I forget when it's coming up, but it's kind of like the first big, like, hey, come on down for the Dodge Brawl tournament. So I think that'll kind of be the real test to see what that actually looks
flying
like.
In the air. Like, I'm wondering, like, how different does it look? Because like it's such night and day sometimes when you see like someone who is in the competitive space play a game that you've played a lot.
Yeah.
Because I think the most interesting thing about, you know, high level play for this game is going to be, for me, is because one of the most important interactions of this game is reacting to someone doing something, right? Like you have to catch a ball, basically, right? And because like that action doesn't happen unless someone throws it, I wonder if, you know, high level play doesn't just have a lot of stalemates where people are trying to find ways to surprise people, because it feels like if you're really good, why wouldn't you just be able to catch every ball thrown at you? So like, what is the counterplay to like someone always camping? Yeah, or if it's a thing where it's like three people are always just sticking together and they throw so many balls that one person can't catch them all.
Yep.
Or like, so I'd be very curious to see what high level like coordinated play looks like, or if it is one of those cases where it's just like, it is very like the optimal play is very quickly found and solved. This is the game in a way, and that isn't like, oh, it's fun to play, but it's like we kind of figured this game out really.
Yeah, never know. It is coming up on E3 season, everybody, and you can tell from official announcements coming hot and heavy this week, and then also leaks. Fun E3 leaks are starting already from our friends over at Fanbyte. Imran Khan had an article earlier this week that confirmed previous rumors that there is a game coming called Final Fantasy Origin. Now, Kyle, don't confuse this with Origins, which everybody knows was that weird bundle of old Final Fantasies on the PlayStation 1. Which was that? God, which ones were that? Were those?
1 and 2.
Was it 1 and 2? Okay.
Yeah, I actually remember that releasing and it being a big deal. Maybe I just know a lot of Final Fantasy super fans, but it was like, I remember people, and I was also working at GameStop at the time, and I remember people like coming in and being very excited for that.
But it was that was the first time 2 was available in English, right?
I think
not as 4, because the 1 and 2, because 2 was originally 4 or whatever, right? And this was like the first like localized release of like proper 2.
Yeah, and then it was Final Fantasy.
This is a different game that we're talking about.
Yeah, this is something else.
I'm going to keep talking about this one.
It's like just literally ignore everything that was just said.
This is Final Fantasy Origin.
But I mean, the confusing thing about it is apparently, and I know that's probably what you're getting to, Hanson, is that Origin singular, the new game that is supposedly in development, takes place in the world of the original Final Fantasy that is like supposedly part of the league.
Which is an idea that I love. So basically what this is Team Ninja, a lot of the Final Fantasy Dissidia and T team, but then also some folks from Neo are making what feels like it could be Final Fantasy Souls. Like take some of that Neo formula, bring it to Final Fantasy. That seems like
some airships.
Honestly, it seems like a match made in heaven. And like that idea of connecting it back to the first Final Fantasy is really fun. It reminds me of like Dragon Quest Builders, where it's like, oh, technically that is within the world of Dragon Quest 1 if the bad guy wins or whatever. I think it's a really fun, kind of loose way to tie everything together. But
yeah, because I think like the original Final Fantasy, there's not really a distinct plot or characters. I mean, like everything is archetypal and very boilerplate of like you have these mages, you have to collect the crystals, but isn't like a driving character or a lot of pathos in like the people that you're interacting with. It's like very much like, oh, you have this thing and you can go do this, but there's no like, oh, what are the themes or whatever here at play here. It's just like typical fantasy adventure. So I'm curious to see like what this game does with that very like malleable but kind of in a way uninteresting world,
As not the biggest Souls guy in the world, I'm very interested in this. But then also as not the biggest Souls guy in the world, do you need that much of a hook if it's, hey, it's kind of like Neo but Final Fantasy, and you're going to be going through and the bosses are going to be Final Fantasy bosses, and you can choose between a handful of classes, Final Fantasy classes at the start of the game. Probably not as many as like a Dark Souls, but all right, you'll have your main options there. That seems like a pretty ripe formula. I don't think you need too fleshed out of a world to really make the most of this genre.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend, obviously, like how distinct are all the classes and stuff. But I think that it, like, if it doesn't have any kind of like interesting world building, I think it'll be the difference between like, oh, this is a good one of those, and like this is, this really speaks to what I love about Dark Souls, because a lot of people like the lore and like digging into the world of that game. And even if you're not like that big a lore guy, that stuff still kind of makes its way to the main narrative in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be where that's really important, is whether or not this is like, okay, if you like those, this is another one of those and that's fine and like it's fun, versus like, no, this is top of class kind of game. Because I think Neo, despite how kind of mindless a lot of it can be, I think has an interesting storyline, and it manages to do enough different from Souls that it's like there are people who prefer the Neo games over Dark Souls, whereas I'd be curious to see what this does as well.
Yeah. It reminded me of like an earlier era of Square where, do you all remember Final Fantasy Fortress, which was this canceled game that Grin was working on, the studio that made Bionic Commando, the reboot, and also Rearmed, which I know is a favorite of Surreal's. But they hired out Grin, and they were working on an offshoot of Final Fantasy 12 that was like set after the DS game, and it was called Final Fantasy Fortress, and then it all kind of fell apart, and there's some good interviews out there kind of detailing
how am I supposed
exactly
to get into
happened.
this franchise? Like there's so many
and
like I would like someone to answer that.
The answer is Final Fantasy VII Remake, realistically.
Okay, so but do I just sit here and wait? Like, do I play this next thing? Like, what's my next move now? Like, I did that.
I think just play Remake on PS5. Oh wait, because you did it already. All right,
yep.
You could. I mean, if you're not tickled pink yet, I don't know exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like, you could maybe just wait until 16 and see how that grabs you, because I did like, and then depending to that, I would maybe kind of see which ones I would recommend. I think maybe 10 is maybe like my favorite classic Final Fantasy, but especially if you've already played 7 Remake, but I would have to like, there would have to be like a short survey of like, what do you like in an RPG, and then
what did you like and not like?
Based on that, I can recommend like a specific type of Final Fantasy for you.
Well, it's funny because every one is an entry point ultimately, right? Like,
yeah,
it's just not like you're missing out on story, I like 15 a lot. I if you like the combat in 7 at all, like Hanson, you haven't even played it. You don't get to shake your head and say, "Oh no!"
15 so many times. Yeah. I didn't finish.
But even then, it's like, do you like are you up for like a dudes rock, like just guys being dudes narrative? That's like Final Fantasy 15 versus 13. It's like, are you like, did you like a lot of the very like sort of emo tones of Remake, then you'll like 13, but there's also like this idea that you might not like it because it's a little too up its own ass.
I am loving y'all spinning your wheels into on this one.
I think like there has to be like some amount of like a questionnaire, but I think.
Yeah, and if you like spinning wheels, there's a car in Final Fantasy 15 that is core to the story.
There's like some hot gas station action too in that game, right? That's a true thing that happens.
It's my favorite driving game.
You get to push it into a shop to get fixed. It's technically your dad. That's a fun metaphor.
You're fine, Jan. I mean, unless you're like the most hardcore person on earth and it's like, I'm going to go back and play all the highlights from Final Fantasy, I think you're fine. You thought whatever you thought of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Final Fantasy Origin, apparently it's coming out for PS5 and PC later on, and according to this story from Fanbyte, there's going to be an alpha demo this summer. you can give it another try there. Zero pressure, you don't have to.
So just anything that comes out, like just forget the past. Just keep moving forward.
Yeah, only focus
totally.
on Final Fantasy First Soldier, the Battle Royale and mobile. I think that's going to be really the next test.
Yeah, I have to go on from here.
I will say though that I think quite a few Final Fantasies are on Game Pass. So even if you just want to spend a weekend saying, like, playing the first couple hours of each one and then picking the one that resonates most with you, like that could totally work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and honestly, if you care about the history, starting up like Final Fantasy IX on Game Pass would be kind of a cool way to see some of the older Final Fantasy stuff in a somewhat more approachable way, because that one's still fantasy and stuff. It's kind of the callback, but hey, no big deal. But anyways, yeah. So this Final Fantasy Origins probably going to be at E3, but Imran Khan over there at Fanbyte, dear friend of the show, he even hedges at the end of the article like, things are in flux. You never know what could drop out at the last second, so it's not 100% going to be at E3, but this thing is happening, which I'm excited for.
Yeah, conceptually, heck yeah, sounds cool
for sure. Speaking of conceptually, heck yeah, we should learn about Biomutant. Let's all clap out and bring in a wonderful new cast. Y'all ready? Go for it. They're here. The Biomutant crew is here. Jeff Markiafava.
Perfectly in sync.
Perfect.
Hello.
Leo Vader.
Hello.
Kyle Hilliard.
Hey, there was a Bio something N64 fighting game that was it
Bio
called
Freaks?
Biomutant?
There's Bio Freaks, wasn't it?
Freaks. Bio Freaks. Yeah, different game. Want to make sure that that's understood up
Mutants
top.
and freaks, totally different.
No relation. This is Biomutant, which is a game that was announced back in 2017, an open world RPG, action RPG specifically, announced in 2017, and Kyle has been salivating ever since that day, waiting for his chance to actually play it. And I feel like it has quietly just grown steam to the point of there's a surprising amount of hype for a game from a new team, Experiment 101, former Just Cause developers from Avalanche, and published by THQ Nordic. But this thing could really make a splash.
Yeah, there was a weird stat a few years ago, I feel like at this point, where it was like there was one time where it was like the most viewed game on IGN. I don't remember how that stat became public, but like people are really interested in it. I'm certainly among those people.
Yeah, and so the three of you have been playing it, yes?
Yes. I'm like 7 hours in right now.
Okay, Jeff, how far are you?
Well, the counter says 3 days because I don't think it stops counting when you put your Xbox in suspend mode. But I'm
in the same boat. Yeah.
In terms of like the main mission that you're going on, I think I'm about halfway through it.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Jeff, you seem to be maybe the most excited to talk about it. I have been completely blind on this thing. How is the fabled Biomutant?
It's been a real roller coaster ride for me because, like everyone else on the internet, I was strangely looking forward to it and really hoping that it would kind of become this sleeper hit. And I feel like the first couple hours I wasn't that into it, and I was a little bit disappointed. And there are still some aspects of it that I don't like, but it's slowly been growing on me as I have continued to play. I think it kind of makes a bad first impression, or just like not the strongest one. But it has slowly been growing on me, and I have been feeling that urge, like I want to play more of it. I want to play more of it right now. And that's been exciting.
I'm really glad to hear that, because I'm probably like 2 hours in and I'm like, this is okay. It lacks polish, but it's like, it feels like a first effort for like a new studio. So like some of the animations are kind of rough, but like it's weird because even though like I agree with you in that first impression's a little rough, I was excited to talk to you guys about it because I knew you were further, and I was like, this just feels like it just takes a while to get rolling, but I bet there's a point where this gets really sort of engaging and interesting, and I'm excited to hear you say that like it does start feeling better as you move along. At least that's what I interpreted what you're saying. I don't want to reword what you said, but
it's just the pacing, or what is it about the couple hours?
Yeah, I think it's, you just don't start with really many abilities unlocked, and you're kind of you like only have one gun and one sword, and it's the things that I have enjoyed about the game. I'm still not super hot on the combat. I think that's the one thing that I've been kind of most disappointed by, and it's not like a huge disappointment. I'm just kind of ho-hum on it, and that is it's like the shooting aspect of it. It mixes shooting and melee combat, but the shooting is kind of just like aim your camera in the general direction of a character and it's going to auto target on them, and then you just kind of pull the trigger and it does a piddly amount of damage, and it's just not super satisfying. And I kind of like shooting more in games than melee combat. But you unlock different weapons and you unlock different abilities, and that kind of makes the combat more interesting. And then the thing I like the most about the game is the crafting, and that takes a while for you to get the resources and to even just kind of figure out the system at play, because I wasn't getting a ton of guns, and then I realized, oh no, you're just supposed to be making most of your guns, and you're like, the customization is really important to it. It's kind of like if it's kind of like the Borderlands arsenal, except you're building each gun. So you're getting like all these garbage parts and you're kind of putting them together, and each piece like will affect the overall stats of that gun and how it handles and stuff. And that's been really cool for me.
There's even a randomize button where it just puts any different random part, any different stock, muzzle, scope, or whatever. And it's fun to just flip through those and see all the different things you could make. That's when I'm starting to like it more too, is when I start being more attached to my guns and melee weapons that I've crafted and my actual abilities and loadout. Because I agree with the slow start analysis. And I think part of that has to do with when this game is trying to pretend to be a AAA game, I think is when it falls the shortest. And there's a lot of that in the start where it's more cinematic sequences with some QTEs that even if the animations were perfect, it would still not be fun. But then it's like a boring QTE where a bad animation happens. And it's just like, am I supposed to be immersed in this? Am I supposed to be interested in what's happening? It's kind of like powering through a lot of that early stuff to when it stops taking control away from you and you can actually explore the open world.
Yeah. I was going to say it feels like it's trying really hard to kind of pass as a AAA game, and it's just not to that level. But the other thing that I have liked from the very beginning is I love this world, and I love the idea of it. And, like all of these little creature mutants are so unlike other characters in games, and I like kind of the Dr. Seussian, vocabulary that they have for all these different things. I think the thing that I like the most about the game is just exploring these different locations, because like you walk 10 feet and you discover a new little area, with like buildings and stuff that's made to kind of explore it. And that's the most fun part of it for me so far.
I agree. Like going to a new place and seeing suburbia pop up is like so exciting, because I just love exploring those destroyed houses. And you maybe will get in a combat encounter or two, or you might not. And you're just walking around, opening the fridge, getting health items, finding like a chest downstairs and checking off like the superb loot in the area you found it. That has been super satisfying and fun. The only downside is, as I play more, I'm seeing more of the same houses, like prefabbed.
Yeah.
Places you're exploring are the same across different regions, but with the loot in different spots, which is maybe nitpicky for a smaller studio's massive game, but for it being one of my favorite things in it, I feel like it's worth calling out.
Yeah, I watched
Hanson, have you played it all? Or
no, I watched like an overview video, and it kind of grabs you early on with just obviously, hey, you're a customizable, freaky looking raccoon with gun that knows kung fu. So there's a good hook.
Wong fu.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me. But then the wild part is
like the larger premise is like, if you look at the movie Wall-E, but just leave that city where Wall-E's hanging out and just like go explore the wilderness. Like that's kind of where you're at, because it's like it's supposed to be a world that humans have abandoned. Like there's remnants of them. They existed. They're sort of like lore at this point, but it is like, there was a company that messed up the world and the humans just abandoned it, and now all these like mutant animals like have control, which is just kind of a cool idea.
I love
and your
that.
character's just like confused why they didn't take better care of the world. They're like, why wouldn't they try to fix it?
That's beautiful. Well, the crazy thing is that like in that overview video, right out of the gate, the lead developer here for Experiment 101, he's like, yeah, basically we're trying to make a Breath of the Wild. He's just like very direct about like, it's Breath of the Wild, and then the combat's a little bit Arkham-y. Like, I just love when developers are like, here's what it is, everybody. And so like, is there any
through
of
the
that?
menus, I definitely saw like a paraglider, and I was like, well, I gotta get that. I got to at least get that, you know?
But that sounds like that conflict of the game then, if it's like, that's part of the vision, and when they're starting development in the middle of 2017, it's like that's probably on the top of everybody's mind, but then it's still, they feel obligated to like, we got to be more AAA and kind of hold that player's hand a little bit more. But does it eventually start to give any of those Breath of the Wild vibes exploration-wise?
I mean, the Breath of the Wild thing, like, you can see it in some of the mechanisms, I think. Like the paraglider that you get, there are certain zone areas that you go where it will do damage to you if you don't have, you know, like whatever buff that you need. You know, like this area is irradiated. And so if you go into it, your irradium meter will build up. But you can go out and find like different suits that have, or like different armor pieces, different clothing options, and kind of piece together something that will give you 100% protection. And then you can go back there, and it's really cool that you can go around and explore that kind of thing. But you know, like beyond that, I don't know that it's trying that hard. It's really telling its own story, and it's a really weird story, to the point where they tell you, like at the beginning, it's like, this is going to be a weird story and there's a weird ending to it, so don't be surprised. And it has been, I've found it interesting, and one of my criticisms is when you first start the game, like the first mission that they give you is very rote. It's like there are these different factions out there. They each kind of have their light or darkness alignment, but you're gonna have to basically conquer all of them in order to defeat these world eaters that are eating this tree. And from there, it kind of sets you on this path where it's like you have to go to each territory, and there's a bandit camp there, surprise, and you kind of fight your way through it, and then that will change the territory into your color, and then everything's fine, and then you go on to the next one. And that was part of my not liking the first couple hours, because it's like, I've done this so many times, I don't want to do this. But then I realized that just kind of through exploring, I unlocked other things that brought me to those world eaters, and kind of, I've already defeated one of them, and I'm about to fight the second one. And it seemed like I kind of just totally sidestepped that aspect of it that they were telling me was important, but I'm not sure that it actually is important. Like, there's kind of a weird thing with the narrator and the narrative, and I'm not really sure what you're supposed to trust and what you're not. And that's been interesting to kind of figure out, because I was like, wait, I just beat one of these 4 like main world eaters, and that seems to be like the like overarching goal of the game, but I skipped the part that they told me I was supposed to do in order to do it.
Yeah. I'm still trying to get a sense. Are you recommending this game? Do you think people should check it out?
I mean, yeah, I'm enjoying it. I think you should go in with tempered expectations, and it's not the AAA game that I think we all were hoping it would be, and that it's kind of presenting itself as. But if the game looks intriguing to you, and if what we have said, you know, nothing is a deal breaker for you, then definitely check it out, or, you know, check out some streams of it and stuff.
And if you're interested in it for the Breath of the Wild similarities, I would say be prepared for a little more collectathon type content versus more unique content. You know, you're still spying those landmarks and journeying towards them, but it's do one of the fix this toilet's plumbing 1 out of 5 times, which is fine, but it's, you know, a little more satisfaction of checking off those boxes. And also the glider is just not as good. You go down way too fast, it's not horizontal enough, and then you hit the ground super hard and it breaks your momentum. You can roll out of it, but just doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
But you can get a mushroom ability that makes these bouncy mushrooms that you can jump off of and get more height, and then paraglide, and you can also use them to kind of climb up the different buildings and stuff, which is fun.
This seems cool.
Like, and some of the other abilities are really weird. There's one where you like, encapsulate yourself in a giant mucus ball, and then you roll around, and like enemies will stick to the outside of it as you roll over them and stuff.
That sounds great.
So at the first couple, it's like, okay, you can get a fire ability, and then you can get a freeze ability. And I was like, this is lame. These aren't fun. Like, I've done that in so many games, but I've never had a mucus ball that I've crawled into and rolled around.
Or used Katamari as an attack.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super fun. Kyle, let's see. Close your eyes. And now punch yourself in the face. No, what is the legacy of Biomutant at the end of the year? Maybe 5 years from now. How will we look back on Biomutant?
The sort of I think that you make that customized character, I think people will really be drawn to and excited about. I think a lot of people are going to be sharing screenshots of like, this is my mammal that I made. This is my cute little guy. I've got like a leather jacket and 2 like Raphael Ninja Turtle size.
Oh, wow.
And I've got like, I'm like kind of look foxy. I think that's the thing that people will be like, sort of remember. I don't know, but it's hard to ask me because I'm not as far as these guys. But I think that will be the sort of the key selling point initially, you know?
I think that's a good point. And the fact that when you have flashbacks, you kind of see yourself as a child and play as yourself. And it's just a small version of whatever character you created. And
Oh,
it just
fun.
is a perfectly believable child version of your created character, which is a very fun novelty. And I hope that sparks some developers' imaginations, you know?
I think the parents are also kind of modeled after you as well. Kind of like the Fallout sort of approach. Like my mother was like a red fox kind of character. And I assume that was because I chose to be kind of a red fox character. I was curious, what do you guys think of the way the story is being told? Because there's no dialogue, right? There's like there's almost like Banjo-Kazooie mumbling, and then the whole game is told by a narrator who, for whatever reason, sounds like the narration of Little Big Planet to me.
Oh, okay.
I
Stephen
don't
Fry.
know why. That's just, I just feel like, I don't remember who, it's a famous voiceover person who did Little Big Planet,
Stephen
but I
Fry.
feel like, what's that?
Stephen Fry?
Yes, it feels like Stephen Fry is like, oh, look at these adorable creatures. Oh, this one has a thought about something. This is what he told you. So it's all relayed that way. And it's like an interesting choice, but I don't know if I love it. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on it. Maybe I'm just not used to it yet.
I'm glad to hear they play with it a bit, but I also am kind of skipping a lot of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I first started, there's a slider in the options menu that lets you affect the frequency that he talks. And when I first started, I was like, oh, I'm turning that way up because I find this really charming and this is cool. And then I turned it down to like 20, and now I have it at like 3 because it's okay during story moments, like big story moments and stuff. But then they throw out a lot of like fortune cookie crap of like, it's always darkest before the dawn and stuff. And there's this incessant need to like keep on throwing stuff out there. And 90% of it is just junk. And then during dialogue, and maybe this is just because I was an editor for so long, but it really bugs me because he'll narrate the dialogue from the other person that you're talking to, from his perspective, but he doesn't say like he says this or something. He'll say like, angry that you took so long to talk to him, and it's like dropping out the subject and just going straight into the verb, and it's. That might just be a me thing, but it's very grating and it's very annoying to me.
I'm glad I didn't know about the slider. I think that's very smart, and that basically addresses if I end up finding it kind of annoying, good to know that I can just kind of turn it down.
And if you turn it down, it won't like he'll still say all of the kind of main story stuff to you. So if it's important, he's going to say it no matter what. But you can turn that down and turn off all the ambient chatter.
Yeah, it's wildly impressive that this is a 20-person team. By and large is the way they describe it, and they've been busting their heinies over there in Sweden to make it happen. So it's cool to see an offshoot from Avalanche and the Just Cause series like this.
Yeah, and I mean, when we say that, like it's trying to pass as a AAA game, and it's not making it.
Yeah,
it's like it's much closer than you would think based on how small the team is, and they have done a really good job. It's like most of these things are minor nitpicks that kind of brought me down from my initial hype level, but I have continued to enjoy it, and it is a very large and interesting world to explore. So they've done a great job.
Agreed.
Yeah, like it lacks polish, but like I almost don't even mean that as like a huge negative. Like it's like almost like the, you know, like a band that you really love, like their first album, which is like the most rough around the edges, but maybe has like the most heart. You know, like it kind of feels like that almost, and that they're like, these guys were really pushing to try to do something interesting here, and I can sense that even if that animation's a little funky. You know?
And I feel like all first albums the first track should just be the band sitting you down and explaining the ending of this album is really weird. So really, really brace for that. Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, Biomutant, everybody, available now. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Do you all want to clap out at exactly the same time? We can go on with the show. Beautiful. Welcome back, everybody. Surreal Vasquez, Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD.
That's right.
This is a remaster.
Featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series.
Okay.
If you pay for him.
Well, he's in this one. He's in the DLC.
No, you have to buy him. It's DLC. It's paid DLC.
Yeah, it comes with the deluxe edition. Yeah.
That's so absurd. Okay, so this is the remaster of 2003's Shin Megami Tensei, which is the Mama series to Persona. Is that the best way to describe this?
Yeah.
One of the mother series to Persona.
Okay.
But not the series mother.
Understand.
No, this has been a pretty satisfying dungeon crawler so far. I'm still not super far in. 4 hours, which is like not a lot. Because I think this game is supposed to be like 50 hours or whatever. But it's very interesting how quickly this game just like goes to puts the RPG slider to the max of just like in the first hour, I think the world ends. And like it's just you go from like, oh, I'm a high school student who's like investigating paranormal phenomenon, and then you find out like, oh yeah, we've already executed a ritual called the Conception that this turns the world into this like post-apocalyptic wasteland Tokyo, and so you're just kind of running around like summoning monsters, and you're kind of like, well, I'm what do I do now? The world's over. How do we deal with this?
Is that why they have I looked at the trailer, and first of all, some sweet world map action going on there. And then second of all, there's like freaking Ghost Rider riding around on a motorcycle. It's like some Skeleton King.
Yeah, I mean, it has all of your classic favorite Persona monsters, like almost from the go, where it's like here's Lily, here's Lilith, here's all the crazy Persona designs that you're used to are actually Shin Megami Tensei things. But it's been really interesting to see. Like coming from someone who's predominantly played Persona and not a lot of Shin Megami Tensei, it is very interesting that I think for a while, one of my issues with Persona was that, these games are all kind of framed very similarly. They all have basically the same premise, and they all kind of follow the same path, which is why I think they've kind of hit for me like less and less over the years.
Sure.
Whereas this feels like this feels almost to some degree what I wanted is something to break out of that formula and just be about something else besides like, oh, this kid's going to school and he's trying to manage keeping up appearances and being friends with everybody, and then also dungeon crawling. And this is all just like end game dungeon crawling of like you're going into these dungeons and filling out the map and recruiting monsters, which is like a much bigger deal here, where you have to talk to monsters and get them to join your team. Those are your party members, are the monsters instead of a collection of high schoolers. But I think to me the most interesting thing so far is that post-apocalyptic premise, because you're looking for your friends in the apocalypse, and you're not finding a ton of people. Like most of the people you find are like dead souls, basically, that are like, well, what do I do now? Or like, I'm going to heal you if you never talk to me, which is a weird thing. Because like all of your healing areas, like you'll find the room with the save spot, and that's separate from the heal spot. And the heal spot is either like a fortune teller you can pay to heal you, or like some guy who's like, don't talk to me. If I heal you, will you leave me alone?
Turns out it's a PlayStation 2 RPG.
Yeah. But like the idea that, you meet your first friend and they're like, well, I don't know what to do now. I was pretty popular in high school. I guess we should go find our
Classic.
friends. They're probably like 90%. They're probably dead because basically everyone is. But I'm going to hold out hope because it's like, what else do I have to do? And like the way that this is very quickly like dealing between like these two cults that are like at war with each other, and how you're dealing with the remnants of that, and you're talking with the monsters more readily. So it just feels like the monsters have taken over society at this point. And like that stuff's been really interesting. And a lot of the art design I think is very basic but really evocative of like very like I don't know what's the like, it feels almost abstract in a lot of ways, and kind of
it looks
really
cool.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, from everything I've seen. And this is on everything or on Switch, or where is this?
PS4 and PS4, Switch, and PC, I think.
Okay, gotcha.
And it's weird because I think the remaster even is at 30 frames a second, which is kind of a weird thing you don't expect with a remaster. But that hasn't been a huge problem. I think if you're familiar with Persona, I think a lot of this is going to click into place really quickly, where you're trying to find the spell that the opponent is weak to, so you can get more turns. And that's basically the premise, like the big thing in combat. But they have a lot of other systems at play. Like there's like as you're progressing, like this thing in the upright corner always changes, and that kind of changes like some of the way battles work. There's a lot of like just the fact that you have all these different monsters on your party and you can only equip 4 of them at a time. I think kind of changes a little bit of the combat. There's like the fusion stuff, and that's different. There's so it's like very much, it feels like a Persona game, if you're coming to it from that series. But I think I like a lot of the conceptual trappings of this series a lot, and I'm curious to see where it goes, more so than I have been like the last couple of Persona games, because it feels like anything could happen.
Yeah,
versus
the world
in a Persona
already
game
explodes.
where it feels very locked into the like, okay, for now we're going to deal with these series of bad guys, and it's going to be like a mystery, but at the end it's like you fight God or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas this, I don't know where this is going, so it's been pretty refreshing.
Yeah, it's cool. And a nice reminder that Shin Megami Tensei 5 is coming out on the Switch. I think last they said it was still this year. And so maybe we'll learn about that thing again soon. But I remember that was like one of the earliest Switch games shown, and it wasn't until pretty recently that they actually started talking about it again. But that's cool. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, name of that one. I was also playing a RPG on my Switch, but it's kind of an old one. Did anybody ever check out Miitopia back on 3DS? Because they just updated it and remastered it for Switch here. But Kyle, do you remember what that was?
Yeah, I mean, is a Spot Pass? Is that the me thing on the 3DS? It's basically like, let's turn that into a full featured game, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like Tamagotchi Life, which was that popular game, especially in Japan. And kind of just making a full RPG out of Miis. But it's just so bizarre in 2021 to play a game on my Switch that's all about designing just a boatload of Miis. Because like, all right, you start out with the main character, and then you recruit more people along the way. You can customize each of them. Each area and town you go into, it'll give you like, here's all the people in the town. You can customize any of them if you want. And it's just so weird to be going back to that same freaking interface from 2006 of like, okay, I have my option for one face that has a mole on it. Okay, I remember that me pretty well. And so it's kind of, if I may, Miitopia is a bit of a RPG for babies, but very effective with a certain group. Like I played a lot with my nephews over the weekend, and they could not have enjoyed it more. It's like that basic, I was going to say child, but I guess human narcissism about like, oh, you make yourself and all your friends and put them in the game. And then it's like, oh my God, now I'm powering up. Now I have this special ability to protect you and stuff. But I actually ended up having a pretty good time with Miitopia for a couple hours. Then I found out that apparently it's 30 hours long. So like, okay.
Who'd you make in there?
Well, it was a real big test. So, I let them choose. So made like the 2 of them. And then the next person that joined their party, that was their mom. And then the big evil bad guy, you can put a face on him, and that was their grandpa, so my dad. And then I got to be thrown in there. Eventually I was like the 4th party member, and you get to like choose your class out of the gate. And so they're like, oh, you gotta be the guy with the sword and shield. I'm like, that's so boring. You're already both the knights. Why would I also? It's like, make me the pop star. And they could not fathom that I would choose pop star as a class. They're like, no, this guy has a sword. I'm like, yeah, but this person's wearing like this flamboyant shirt and they have a microphone. They're clearly the cooler character. And it really shattered
clearly
their
Ben
brains.
Hansen. It's
Thank
like
you.
spitting image.
Thank you for understanding. But yeah, Miitopia and Grezzo is the team that made it, or that ported it to Switch, which is like the Ocarina of Time 3D team and all that fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. So what are they working on then? I mean, I wonder if that was a full all hands on deck.
Yeah.
Let's get Miitopia over to Switch the last, I don't know, how long does that take? A couple months? A year? I don't know.
I have no idea. But yeah, hopefully they're making something big and new in the vein of an Ever Oasis, even if it's not Ever Oasis 2. But also on the news front this week, did you all see that SteamPal thing?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
The little bit that's out there. So Ars Technica broke this story about, apparently there's been like, it's been mentioned in a bunch of code databases and stuff like that going through Steam. But it seems like Valve is making a switch. is the easy headline of this, of making a portable PC that's a little bit wider than the Switch, and you can also dock it and hook it up to a TV and stuff, but we don't really know too much about it beyond that, other than like it's going to run on Linux, of course, because they love them some Linux. Kyle, this seems like it's up your alley. There's been, plenty of portable PCs before, but do you feel like Valve releasing something like this would turn your head?
I mean, yeah. That was my initial reaction, was like, I've looked into some of these from other companies of like, because, I love portable gaming and I would love to play PC games in a portable situation. I like it conceptually a lot. But that was my sort of reaction, was like, this kind of exists.
Yeah.
And also, like, I love Valve, but their hardware sort of legacy is middling at best,
It definitely reminded me of like that whole era of hype about Steam machines. Do you remember how much time we spent?
Yeah. Like, just nothing. And so like that's sort of my cautiousness about it. But like, I love the idea of like Steam, Valve making their Switch. I think, like, if it's a good piece of hardware, like I'll pick one up for sure. Like, I would love that. But I'm just like, everything they've done before that related to hardware makes me like, okay, well, let's wait and see what this thing is, and when it gets announced, if it does truly exist,
Yeah, I think even beyond like the kind of Valve's, wishy-washy commitment to hardware, I think there are a lot of things about the Switch that we don't think about. Like, I think, beyond the fact that it's like, hey, you can play your games on the go or in front of a TV, I think the price point of it was really appealing. And I don't know, I'd be very curious to see if Valve can pull off, that balance of like, this is a really compelling machine because most of the games run fine, it's not like a weak computer. If they can manage that and then have it also not be like $600 or something, because I think that would end up being a little too much. And how, like, what the ease of use is there is it like, could you not only hook it up to a TV, but have it so, cloud saves work well enough that you can play something on your PC, and then if like, you want to go on the go, you can like that cloud sync stuff ends up working really well, so you can just take it and go and have that be your setup.
Yeah,
so I'd be curious. Obviously, there's a lot of specifics.
Yeah. Is it going to be like the Index, where it's this really high level thing that is like good, but just prohibitively expensive? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, like what it gets me maybe the most excited about this SteamPal, as they're calling it right now, but who knows what it'll actually be called, but that's a very good name, is thinking about like, Gabe Newell's always talking about the benefit of creating hardware so you can create software that's tailor-made to it. Like if they made a smaller Valve game that was like the ideal way to play this is handheld, just some cutesy little thing, that's very exciting, because it wouldn't be exclusive, obviously. It'd still come out on PC, but just having any excuse to maybe, kick some butts in gear at Steam to get something out the door, this might be another reason for that, because that's what, Index was for. They wanted to partner Half-Life Alyx with that, even though the timing eventually didn't work out. But
yeah, I mean, speaking of Alyx, like they could totally make it exclusive for that thing of like, if you want this Valve game, or like what would probably end up being like a tech demo, in the way that like, there's a Portal and there's a Dota and there's like a Half-Life experience you can have only in VR. I could totally see them saying like, if you want like another like let's say maybe 2-hour Portal game, you're gonna have to pony up for this handheld thing.
I would.
I feel like it's gonna fall into that.
I 100% would.
Yeah, and I think people, would do that, but I think the risk there is you fall into having like these games that are cool but don't really feel like they stand alone. I feel like that happened a lot with like in the Vita and even to a degree the PSP era, where it's like, oh, it's like this franchise you love on the go, and it's like, but it's not as good. It's like, do you want Uncharted but the worst version? I'm like, nah, because the best version wasn't even that good. But I love the idea of PC gaming without having to PC game. As someone who does not, even I do a lot of PC gaming just because of streaming and stuff and like ease of access with codes, but I don't want to sit here and play my games like for fun, for leisure. I pretty much never PC game unless it's for work or content, because I spend so much time here that I'm like, if I'm gonna have fun, it's like the last place I want to sit. No offense to me sitting here talking to all of you right now, but I think that's pretty appealing. But the thing is, as far as price point, it's always going to feel like a little bit too much, I think, in the sense that you are paying for something that you very legitimately don't need to play the software. And I think that's the big differentiator.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, oh, it's a mobile version of what you love. But like the Switch, like there is no if
alternative.
you don't have a Switch, yeah, you can't. You're not playing like a lot of these games.
Yeah, no, that's a great point for sure. And it's like, yeah, it'd be cool to have a new Portal. You know, if it's exclusive, that's obviously a big debate. But if they just release a trailer and it's some schmuck playing Portal in a park or playing Portal 2 co-op sitting on a rooftop in one of their cool rooftop parties, like the Switch like reveal trailer, like I feel like that would be enough to get some people very excited. Just seeing that in action, just run through all of your favorite Valve games, but outside. Just think about it. But that's the SteamPal. We'll see when and how the thing is actually released. But some fun rumors. Suriel, do you know how this entire thing operates?
Well, I believe I was talking to Imran earlier, and he's able to confirm that it is through Patreon.
It is. Because there were a
There's
lot
a
of
story
rumors.
up on Fanbyte right now.
Yeah,
Is that
about how
true?
this whole thing operates.
Those dirty dogs got our scoop. It's patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. Thanks to everybody who supports us at any tier to keep this whole indie operation rolling. Especially thanks to the fine folks at Rainmaker.gg. Rainmaker is the all-in-one platform for streamers, developers, and publishers. If you're a streamer, Rainmaker gives you insight on your channel's performance and a full suite of streaming tools, including overlays, tipping services, chatbots, alerts, and more. For devs and publishers, Rainmaker provides powerful tools that help you analyze game performance and discover creators on the world's biggest streaming platforms. Head to rainmaker.gg/MinnMax or hit the link in this episode's description to get started. Also, thanks to our friends at Fixture Gaming. They want you to know about the Fixture S1, which is a Pro Controller clip that you clip onto the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller to actually be able to use that handheld, and it attaches the screen to the top. It is a very convenient way to play with the Pro Controller on the go, which is what it's all about. You can head to Amazon or Fixture Gaming's website. It's available in gray or red and blue. It's $35, but you listening right now can get $5 off the Fixture S1 if you use the promo code MinnMax. 2 N's, all one word. So promo code MinnMax for $5 off the Fixture S1. If you're listening to this in the podcast version, you should at least Google and look at what this Fixture Gaming Fixture S1 is. Because I think when you see it, it's like, oh, I get why that would come in handy. That's a really cool idea. But we're also giving one away. So if you share this episode of the podcast or your favorite piece of MinnMax content on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and use the hashtag MinnMaxFixture, all one word, MinnMaxFixture, we'll randomly choose from everybody who uses that hashtag to ship out one Fixture S1. So thanks to the fine folks over there. Also, thanks to Call Me By Your Game podcast. There's at least one video game that's close to your heart from an impactful, specific moment in your life. Call Me By Your Game is a podcast that dives into these very experiences. It's an intimate look at what makes video games special for different people. On each episode, our host Connor McCabe sits down with a guest to discuss a special game from their past. They dive into what the guest loved about the game and also what was memorable about the time in their life when they first fell in love with it. Check us out wherever you get your podcast, and maybe someday you'll call me by your game. Last 2 episodes, just to show you the range of this podcast, were about Pajama Sam and Madden 2004. So this,
hell yeah.
It all depends on the guest. It's a good podcast there. So thanks to the folks at Call Me By Your Game. Also thanks to I Am 8-Bit. They want you to know that you can get the Manifold Garden soundtrack on vinyl. The double album with stunning architectural pop-up album art by the Fourth Focus is available on I Am 8-Bit's wonderful online store. There's a limited edition of these. Only 1,000 are made. The music is by Larissa Okada, and the vinyl soundtrack also includes the digital download. If you don't have a record player, you just want this beautiful Manifold Garden soundtrack on vinyl, and then you can actually listen to it on your computer. That's a good way to go. And as always, you can use the promo code TAXDAY. TAXDAY, no space, for 10% off everything in I'm8bit's wonderful online store under $100. And because they're so generous, every single week they ship out a wonderful prize from their store to the MinnMax community. Everybody who supports us, even at that $2 tier, can submit a question for us to go through, and that person will win a great prize. And this week, it's a mystery prize from I Am 8-Bit, so you don't know what you're going to receive. But Kyle, it is your job to remember every single question we get here, and then remember our absolute favorite, and then I Am 8-Bit will ship out that wonderful prize. Are you ready?
I will do that.
Thank
for
you. Holden Hintz submits a question, and he says, Minneapolis Maximus, hello. What's a video game you've doubted you'd ever like, but then turned out it's one of your new favorites? Simple question.
FIFA.
FIFA?
I don't.
Oh,
yes.
That's a good answer.
I don't really follow a lot of sports. I have historically followed like soccer more closely than any other sport, and I've like fallen off, and I'm trying to get back onto it. But that, and then like a shout out to also Madden, where I was like, hell yeah. That was not an ironic hell yeah. I did play a lot of either Madden 03 or 04 because I'll try to keep it short, but I always gamed with my brother who's 6 years older. And I was really heavy into like Smash, Melee, and Mario Party. Literally, I would ask my brother every single day to play those games with me. And for Melee, we would play like only the two of us, 64-man Melee. It was hours.
Oh my God.
Hours of work.
That sounds so fun.
I tried doing that as an adult. I didn't have the stamina. I don't know how I did it. But in exchange, he's like, okay, well, will you play Madden with me? And I was like, sure, like, why not? And I was so awful when I first started. And eventually I got like good enough where we could have competitive games. And I really didn't end up enjoying that. And I don't play Madden anymore, but I do play FIFA, which I picked up only a few years ago. And now I've been playing every year. And it's like one of my favorite games and one of my most played games every year.
Really? That's stunning. Yeah. I mean, did you play like Mega Man Soccer? Did you have like any built-in love for like soccer games? Yeah.
Strikers, maybe?
Really. I think really with soccer, it was kind of a combination. When the World Cup happened around that era, and I forget which year, 2016, 15, 14, those who really follow the World Cup would probably know the year.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? I think I want to get into this. And like just culturally, being Mexican, soccer is such, in most places in the world, South America, soccer is such a huge sport. Like my dad is like a huge soccer fan. Like he has a custom license plate with his Liga MX soccer team. So I definitely grew up around soccer in that sense. And I was like, all right, let me like try to get into playing this. My brother also wanted to play. So I was like, sure, I'll play with you. Why not? And then I'm like, I kind of like this. And I'm like, let me learn the actual game, which helps you get better at the virtual game because you start to like be able to eye stuff. And that's basically just how I got into it. And like soccer became very fun once you like understand how to read the field, because otherwise it is very boring because you're like, I don't get it. Nothing happens for most of the game and people get excited, but I don't know what they're cheering for. But you start to see the plays and it can be really fun to watch unfold.
That's a good one. Man, I never would have thought of that. I'm trying to think. I mean, one that I doubted I'd ever like, I kind of held my nose up at Call of Duty for a long time. And then it wasn't until like the first, I'm trying to remember how this math worked out. Yeah. The first cover story about Call of Duty that I went on back at Game Informer, first like cover story trip, was for Call of Duty Ghosts. And so I played like Modern Warfare 3. And it was just like this moment of like, oh yeah, like I always thought I wouldn't enjoy Call of Duty games, but I do enjoy just like short campaigns that are pretty simple, pretty smooth. You're never going to hit too many gigantic obstacles at like the normal difficulty. And I've really enjoyed playing those campaigns, largely ever since then. So I'm glad I got over that hump. But does one jump out for anybody else?
Yeah, Undermine recently, and then Returnal.
Yeah.
Like I never thought I would get into those games, but Returnal's probably my game of the year at this point.
Oh wow, yeah, we have a Max Spoilers coming up on Friday where you talk all about the ending and stuff. So if you've beaten that game, you can tune into that.
Yeah. I honestly didn't think I was gonna like Kentucky Route Zero as much as I did. I think because I played the first 2 episodes like shortly after they released.
Yeah.
And it was definitely like in a mode where I guess I wasn't really like that much into text heavy games where I was just like, oh, okay, this is like interesting and I like the writing, but it's like, I don't know, this seems a little too low key for me. And then, going back and playing it, last year, I was blown away by it. So it was definitely one of those things where, sometimes you're just not in the mood for a game and then you pick it up again and it's like a completely different experience in a lot of ways.
Yeah, yeah. Gio Benogi submits a comment over on Patreon. It says, I've heard combat and or movement in games described as floaty. What exactly does floaty mean? And what are some of your favorite ways that developers can combat that feeling? Oh boy.
It's not always a feeling you want to combat, but I think that floaty, because in action games you want things to be really quick and responsive, I think floaty is almost like, literally it can be you're in the air too long after a jump and that kind of messes with your timing of like, oh, I jump and I kind of expect to land at this moment. Just from having played other games, it just feels like a jump should take less time, just literally. And then when games don't follow that very quick and responsive rule, it can feel kind of like the game is off in a lot of ways.
The old Little Big Planet platforming is maybe number one example in my mind of a game that's just too floaty.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like
one way to
wait,
one way
Janet,
to
are you
address
defending
it is,
platforming in Little Big Planet?
Well, I'm gonna let Kyle speak on it, but yeah, no, I don't. I like disagree with LBP on floatiness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh. I mean, I love LBP, but I think floaty is. I don't even think it's necessarily a negative thing necessarily. Sometimes, like it's just how it plays. But I think it's kind of undeniable with the original Little Big Planet.
But it kind of like, I guess it kind of fits the tone of that game. It's like, it's also kind of loosey-goosey to begin with.
It is, it's floatier than I think a standard platformer, but I don't personally, like when, in terms of the question at least, like when is something too floaty? Like for Little Big Planet, I think the reason I wouldn't necessarily describe it as, this is floaty or whatever, is it fits in keeping of the universe. I think when a game is like, how do we know a game is too floaty in a jump? It's when the gravity and the overall feeling isn't supported by the surrounding space and the universe that you've created. And then the secondary thing for me is when the sound design doesn't support the feeling for the player. So a big part of feel comes through sound, and that's what makes like the DualSense so cool, because it can kind of help elevate that. And so much shout out to sound designers for doing like so much great work that actually carries a lot of games in a lot of ways. But yeah, like even something as simple as having like a landing sound, like if it doesn't fit right, it just feels off. It feels like something's not happening the way it should be. Like you don't feel a weight when you land, I think is what adds to floatiness for me, if there's no weighted feeling. And I guess with Little Big Planet, I do feel eventual weights when I drop. Like it is more, gravity defying than Mario or like 3D World or whatever, but I don't pick it up and immediately say, oh, this is like kind of, weird. And that's what I think of when I think of floaty, when it's kind of throwing me off a bit.
Yeah. Sackboy's definitely a lot better on the front, but yeah.
Yeah. There's also like the idea of how much like freedom do you have during that jump. So something like Little Big Planet, I think one of the reasons it does feel so floaty is because it's intentional, because you're meant to be able to manipulate the arc of your jump, which makes platforming easier and more accessible, versus something like Super Meat Boy, where it's like you do have that air maneuverability, but the amount of time that you have to mess with it can make it seem really difficult. And like it all depends on like how, like if you're jumping and then it takes you forever to land and there's nothing you can do about it, I think that's the worst feeling.
Right.
But it depends on what you can do in the air. So something like Devil May Cry, which is not explicitly a platformer, can have really floaty jumps because there are certain parts of it where you are in the air for a long time, but there are ways to mitigate it. Like there are ways you can just slam down on the ground really quickly, and that time that you spend in the air you can use air combos. And so like there is a purpose for how floaty the jumps are because you have options in the air. So I think it all depends on the game and how the game uses it. I don't think float is inherently bad, but I think sometimes people tend to use it as a pejorative because it feels like out of step with like they usually use it for jumps, so it's meant to say like the jumps are slow, which is I think what they tend to mean, and you don't have a lot of agency.
Yeah, thinking about like sound design and the disconnect and stuff, it's such a weird detail, but it'll always stick with me. Where for Borderlands 2, they have like the different manufacturer of all the different guns and stuff, and one of them's kind of like the junky company that makes kind of like trashy guns and stuff. And I remember talking to the sound designer on that team, and they're like, yeah, we realized the secret to make the gun feel junkier, because it's kind of a tough thing to get across, is we just put more of a delay between you pulling the trigger and then the sound of the gun actually going off. Like that's the only difference we made, and suddenly just this gun feels like a piece of crap in your hands all of a sudden. It's such a smart little move.
Funny.
Isaac Fox writes in and said, would anyone on the panel want to see a Dead Space trilogy remaster? Yes.
Yeah.
Of
course.
Yes,
here's what I want. Dead Space Trilogy Remaster, and I just want everything in it. Just everything. Put the movie on there. Put the crappy Xbox Live Arcade game.
Ooh, Extraction.
Mobile game. There's a mobile game that you can't play anymore. Put that in there. The Wii game that eventually got ported to PS3 that was an on-rail shooter.
Yeah.
Put the full comic book in there. Just all of it. Yeah. Just make it like
Costco level remaster.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. It's like
game in there.
They can call it like the anthology collection or something. Like it just collects everything in one spot, and I would happily buy it.
Yeah.
I think it certainly feels like that would be up next. Like EA seems to be slowly inching into the remaster world, and that seems like that'll happen within 4 years. Would anybody bet that it's not happening?
I want to replay those. Yeah. I'd love to have an excuse.
I've never played them, so that'd be convenient.
First one holds up pretty well. Yeah, I think there's some.
The second one's the best one. Yeah.
I'll probably dip into them. Like I have like light plans to play those pretty soon. So hopefully if they do remaster them, it's not so soon that I feel salty. Like just far enough away that it's of value, but we'll see.
I was actually thinking specifically about the ending of Dead Space 2 and like went and looked it up again. It like if I were to like think about like my favorite endings in video games, Dead Space 2 would be like in that list, like in the top 5, top 10. Just the way it concludes, the way you feel, the way you completely abandon all hope in the last 10 minutes of that game, and then it comes back, and the way it calls back to the original game. It's so good. It's so good.
Wow, there we go. In the realm of like remasters that we can expect sometime soon, I was listening to Kelsey Lewin's podcast, friend of the show, the Video Game History Hour, which is very informative. Every episode is just like a bit of a deep dive into a topic that not many other podcasts are talking about. Like the last episode is all about Dark Watch and the history of Dark Watch from High Moon, the developer that went on to be a Call of Duty support studio and also made the Transformers games.
Is that like the vampire FPS?
Yep, the vampire spooky Wild West game from back in the day.
But with Blur Studios made a really cool intro for that game.
Exactly. Oh yeah, that's a time and a place. But I was thinking like, yeah, I mean, we always talk about Activision running out of games to remaster other than Guitar Hero. But it's like, oh, they own the rights to Dark Watch. I could see that being like, just kind of, hey, I don't know, we'll test the waters. Let's see if anybody's interested in HD Dark Watch. I think I could see it happening when we get to the bottom of that barrel. Chris here submits a question over on Patreon, says, Ben and the Beauties. Thank you, Chris. But I guess I'm not a beauty, but that's fine. What moment in a game that either... hang on. What's tough about reading... What's tough about reading questions is sometimes you try and get ahead of it, and it's like, I think there's a typo here, so I'm going to try and fix it on the fly to make them seem better. But other times, I'm reading it, I'm not sure if it's written in a funky way. So I'm going to read it as is, and we'll all just let the chips fall where they may. Chris says, what moment in a game that either were your mostest gut-wrenching or broke your mind? So just...
Okay, either of those two things.
Like a gut-wrenching moment.
Or broke
your mind. Yeah, I guess. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
You get the idea.
The end of Metal Gear Solid 2. Absolutely made me question my own reality.
Oh, like in our
and the sequels really gets you.
Yeah, always the ending of the sequels is Kyle's biggest kryptonite. But you're just talking about like Arsenal gear, just the phone calls, the codec calls from Campbell and all that
stuff.
stuff.
The game feels like it's breaking while you're playing it, and that's all consistent with what's going on in the world. It's so effective. I loved it.
Is it... I mean, it's scary, but I'm trying to remember now, like, is it just scary because there's like a flash of Campbell being a skeleton, or it's scary even before that? No, it's
scary because the people that you have trusted for the last 20 hours, now you question do they exist?
No, it's not.
You know what I mean?
Not even
like, where am I? What is this?
But it's not just that. It's I question: do I exist as a human? Am I playing this game right now,
that bled out of the TV into my real world. I looked around my brother's bedroom and thought, "What am I doing right now?"
Well, I think it is like the fact that it feels less like it feels like the game kind of shifts perspective and is talking to you, the player, in a way that like, video games try a lot, like they'll be like, let's break the fourth wall. But I think this is very much like like somewhere between that and like, I'm going to give you a manifesto that feels very out of step with what you were doing. Mm-hmm. So it just feels like you have entered this completely different realm of like narrative that games just don't do, like even after Metal Gear Solid 2. It just feels like what if you suddenly read like a book of philosophy while you were playing this game, and it was like this in a weird, like the thing about that is, it was very prescient, but it did feel like, what if we sent you down this conspiracy rabbit hole, like apropos of nothing, it felt like at the time.
What if we explained to you why Twitter is going to be bad for like 20 minutes?
It's like if a game basically like for like, Jack and Daxter basically had the character sit you down and says like, look, one day you're going to die and this is what it's going to to feel, and you should like hope for like it just feels like.
I think that happened in Combat Racing, right? That's like the whole arc
I think so.
I never finished Combat Racing, so.
No, I actually haven't played it. It's funny with MTS
quick aside,
too.
Janet, I played it within the last 2 weeks because the whole bundle was on sale. So I played the first hour of Jack X Combat Racing.
How was it?
It's not good.
All right, I can't wait.
I was bummed out by it.
You weren't saying give me some more?
I'm excited to be disappointing. But like MGS2, it's funny because I can barely remember what that ending is. Like I played it when I was really young.
Yeah.
So I have a really incredibly vivid memory of the opening of that game, a few of like the bosses, and then it kind of like starts to sort of fizzle out. So I've been wanting to replay those. So I'll let y'all know if I really, I wonder if I'm going to start remembering what happened. But there's a lot of like mind bendy stuff in Metal Gear in general. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, but that seems like peak to me. And again, it's the classic conundrum. By classic, I mean one that maybe we've talked about in MinnMax Council, our Patreon exclusive podcast a couple times, of like there's maybe no game I'd rather do a deepest dive on than Metal Gear Solid 2. But we would probably need to do 1 and 2. Like jumping to 2, I feel like you'd be missing some good discussions. It'd be a little bit weird. And I love 1 dearly, but I'm not as excited to replay 1 and talk about it as I am 2, but maybe in the future at some point. Aesir Lord Thor itself writes in and says, what's your favorite series that you've played the least of? This is an interesting question. I don't know if they're talking hours or like entries. I kind of read it as entries.
Probably
Mine's
Zelda.
Final Fantasy. Oh, I'm sorry. You go first.
Oh, okay, sure. I'm going to say Zelda because I've only really played, I beat Wind Waker, like 98% sure I beat Wind Waker. Again, childhood, it kind of blurs. It just, what did I finish? I didn't write it down, I didn't think it mattered.
Gut-wrenching endings. You probably remember that ending.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just that it all blurs together. Like the only thing I really remember is Madden from that era. But and then I played like part of Majora's Mask, but I didn't finish it because I got intimidated by the water temple. Everyone's like, it's so hard. I'm like, I don't even want to do it then. And I just never stopped playing. And then Breath of the Wild, I actually still haven't beaten. So that's probably my favorite series that I just haven't really seen a lot of those titles all the way through.
Yeah, just dabbling.
I'm 80 hours into Breath of the Wild, though. Like, don't at me and say, like, oh, you didn't play Breath. No, it was launch day 1. I was there putting my Joy-Con on incorrectly. I put the straps on upside down. The first day I got it,
Smart.
I was there. I jumped off. We had the glider. It happened. But I'm too beastin' and I never finished the last 2, so.
Just do it, Janet. Just do it before.
It's going to be so much work because I want to do it like, I could get it done, right? But I want to do it the way that I want to do it, where I'm like exploring, I'm buying like, I'm dyeing some fabric. Like I'm trying to do it at my leisure pace, but I'm waiting for Nintendo to put pressure on me with Breath of the Wild 2. I'm like, until you give me a reason, I'm not going to rush to get back into finishing
Give me
it.
a ticking clock to beat.
Yeah.
And Kyle, yours is Final Fantasy?
Yeah, I mean, I've beaten 15 and 7 Remake, but and I've dabbled in just about every other one. I've probably played about 2 hours of every other Final Fantasy game, at least. Some more than others.
That's wild.
But yeah.
I would have thought you played like all of like the way you like talk about it.
No, I defend 15 because it has this weird reputation where people are down on it, but I really think 15 is very sweet, and I really like that.
Yeah, we're only down on it because we know how good the other ones are, Kyle.
You got to finish it, man.
I know the ending's good. I hear it all the time.
You're the person that doesn't finish the rest of them, isn't that like?
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, but
really...
I'm not bad mouthing Final Fantasy 9.
All right, I'll give you that. You're right.
Kyle, honest, I'm not trying to shame you. I promise. Have you ever seen the ending to Final Fantasy 8?
This is a question for Kyle?
Yeah.
No, I have not.
It is so good, and that's one that. I mean, if you played through it, that would be fantastic. But at some point, just look up like the ending cutscene to Final Fantasy VIII, because it's my favorite cutscene, one of my favorite cutscenes of all time, where it's just the group all celebrating, and it's all shot like a character has a camcorder at the celebration party, and it's just like these weird candid looks at all the characters. It is the sweetest thing. I don't know. Maybe this is a weird one, but Cyril, what I thought of is all of my summers now. Over the last couple of summers have just been devoted to playing Marvel vs. Capcom 1. And then I realized, like,
oh, interesting.
I don't know if I've ever played Marvel vs. Capcom 2 in my life. And I've maybe played 2 rounds of 3, and I played maybe an hour of Infinite Story, and that's about it. And so it's weird to just focus all in on the first one. But that's
it's weird because I honestly think 3 you would like 3 more if you could play it more easily, because I think the roster of that game, I think, is probably more attuned to you, because like
Tronbon, baby.
Yeah, it's got Tronbon, it's got Phoenix Wright in it, which is like, I don't know how much you like Phoenix Wright, but it's just the fact that he's there is like really interesting. It's got Deadpool, it's got Nemesis, like there are a lot of interesting choices in the roster of that game. And so I think you get a kick out of that. But yeah, like that first one is definitely like it's not the best one, but I do have a lot of nostalgia for it because it was the first time where it's like I like Spider-Man and I like Ryu. Like this is my dream game. And yeah, I can definitely see why you would get wrapped up in it for sure.
Yeah, and I always appreciated learning about 3 and seeing gameplay videos of 3 and stuff. And I know maybe some of us are kind of Deadpooled out now, but the first time I saw that attack in 3 where Deadpool grabs his health bar and beats the enemy with it, it's like, that is just the most fun you can have in a fighting game. I love that stuff. Did you have a series in mind, Serial?
I think it would probably be a Guilty Gear because I think I've only played Xrd for any significant amount of time, but I think that there is something about those characters that I think I really like. You know what though? I think it's actually King of Fighters. I think King of Fighters is one of those series where I've played 98, I've played 2002, and I've played 13. But I wouldn't say that like they're my favorite games, but there is something about that series that I think I kind of grew up with, in arcades, and I think that series is like tied with Mortal Kombat for character designs that I just have a ton of love for. Like I like the way it's just like kind of the closest to these people are actually wearing street clothes. It's kind of heightened. It's like very like what I think the Japanese call chunin, which is like very kind of teenage cool, where everyone's wearing a lot of like chokers and chains on their kind of on their pants and stuff. But it feels like this is a cool version of actual people clothes, and I like a lot of the designs in that series, and I like the characters a lot. But it's just like I'm hoping that 15 at least finds a way to make that stuff really appealing from a gameplay perspective beyond like I really like the look of these characters.
Yeah. Fielding submits a question over on Patreon and says, "Hello, friends. How do you think game review scores would change if they were written in a complete vacuum, with nobody knowing how others have rated the game? Do you think the reviews would be more varied, or would there be little to no difference?" This is an excellent question, Fielding.
Well, I feel like I guess it depends on like, does he mean professional reviews? Because I feel like that is a large part of what happens at this point.
I think he's talking about professional reviews. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that like, for my part, and I think for what I've experienced from other people, it's like that is kind of what ends up happening in a lot of cases. And there are some conversations that happen between like, hey, I'm stuck here. Do you know what's going on? Like I had someone reach out to me about a thing recently of like, I don't know how to solve this thing. But in large part, I think that there is that vacuum effect going on, at least for me personally, speaking to myself. Like I don't look up anything about games that I'm interested in reviewing after I know that I'm reviewing them. And I generally don't talk to other people about games I'm reviewing. So like for me, a lot of my reviews end up being in that vacuum. And in a lot of cases, like you don't know who's got access to what. So you don't want to make that question about like, hey, do you know about this? And they're like, we haven't gotten the game yet. But yeah, for me, I feel like that is what ends up happening for me in most cases.
Well, I think it's also kind of asking, like, if no one ever saw your review, like, like this, I think that's how I read the question. Like, not only in a vacuum, which I still think it's good, Cyril, that you pointed out, because there are a lot of people who like, I don't know if they think we're all like in one like group chat, like, hey, who's reviewing that? Like, that doesn't happen. Like every now and then, maybe I will know like, oh, so-and-so is also reviewing it, but that's very rare. Like none of us are, to my knowledge, hitting up like, I'm going to talk to all my friends at this other outlet and like find the reviewer to talk. Like that doesn't happen. Right. But to me, I read it as like, if no one ever saw your review scores, do you think they'd skew higher or lower? And I think they might skew a little bit lower if no one ever saw it. Because for me, when I review a game, I feel like they'd be actually mostly the same, to be honest, but like with a slight dip lower, because for me, like when I'm reviewing, I do try to be really tactful and acknowledge all of the good and all the bad, and also look back at the scale too. Like that's a big part of how I've experienced reviews of, okay, how does this outlet define this number or this title or whatever, and where does it fit? So like, I think it's a lot about review scores that the audience doesn't know. Like for me personally reviewing, I don't know the score of something until I'm done reviewing it. Like sometimes I usually have a sense like plus or minus of one number, but I write it and I don't actually ever tell my editor what I'm thinking of scoring it. I ask them what it reads as, then we have like a conversation, and that's the degree of input as well. Like I've never had an editor tell me, oh no, this isn't, that's not the right score to give it or something. It'll just help inform where I land, or if I'm in between something, I'm like, okay, well, they think it reads like this. Well, let me like clarify this part, or it's already very everyone's already keeping it very real. Like I said, maybe it's skew a smidge lower, but I don't know any reviewer who isn't just like, this is straight up what I think, and I'm putting it out there. Like,
Yeah.
reviewers don't care what y'all are going to be mad anyway. Like, whether you scored something high or low, someone's going to hate you, so you might as well keep it real. I don't know any
Right.
reviewer who would change a score out of fear of perception. Like, people are going to hate you. The end. So
Yeah, I
there's this game.
I do think that with reviews, you're usually pretty siloed off. I mean, I'm sure I'm not in any of these cool Discords, but I'm sure there are Games Press Discords where people are talking to each other. I don't know. I think they're probably better off if they don't jump in there and say, what does everybody else think about this game that's being reviewed right now? That could really color your perception, because I think it can have a huge impact when the game's released or when like the embargo lifts, just how you perceive a game. Like a good example maybe is like Biomutant, which we talked about in this episode of the podcast. Like, we recorded that before any of the embargoes lift. So that's like a good example of exactly what you're talking, Fielding, where like that was like a vacuum discussion. Whereas now I think there'd be a different discussion about Biomutant, even though it's in the same episode you're listening to now. If we recorded that after the embargo lifted, you had a better sense of where everybody else was. It's kind of a more pure, raw discussion before it's like, well, these are going to be the bullet points that we'll remember forever about Biomutant, moving on. I think it's so easy to have that public mass, just kind of template for this is how this game will be received from now until the end of time, moving on. It's like, well, actually, there's always a lot more nuance in every game's release, but...
Yeah, I think one of the closest thing that's happened recently to me is maybe Outriders, because that was a game where it's like the game launches and everybody's playing it at the same time.
Right.
And there was no like embargo for that. It's just like the game launches when it launches, and that's when you start playing. For that, it definitely was this thing of like, I think I had a very weird take about this story. And I basically locked, as soon as I saw people like reactions for Outriders out in the wild, I basically closed Twitter and was like a complete, like, I'm not going to check Twitter at all. I'm just going to play the game and finish it and have it. And like I did have like this feeling on the back of my mind that like I think I'm gonna be maybe one of the few people who actually gives a shit about this game's story and like is willing to consider it, because I think a lot of it is like, oh, it's like dumb fun, or like maybe one of the things I just offhandedly caught. So it actually made me more interested in diving into that part of it, because it felt like, okay, like I kind of know what I think about this game as a whole, but it's like leaning into this angle of like the story. It was something that kind of made me think like, oh, this will be like something that'll change the review. But it felt like exploring more of what I think about this game versus like, well, everyone else likes it, so I guess I'll like it as well. Mm-hmm. So it did kind of, I think, to some degree color it, but I think that is an exception versus like what I think of, something like Resident Evil, where it's like, I have a pretty good idea of what I think about this game, and but I don't know how anyone else is going to receive it. So you are in that, like, am I going to be the one person who really likes it and everybody else hates this game because it feels so kind of slapdash in a lot of ways of like tonally? Mm-hmm. Or is everybody going to be on the same page as me? Like I think reviews tend to happen in a vacuum. I think and the times where there is that context to consider, I think, is the exception and not the rule.
Yes.
I think too, like really quick, 'cause, I mean, I feel like we could talk about this literally forever, but so often I've seen readers sort of feel like, oh, it feels like all the critics hate this game or all of the critics love this game. And obviously there's plenty of games where people are split on reviews. But I think one of the reasons that happens is not because we're all like texting each other. It's just because I think a lot of us have similar analytical sensibilities from writing a lot about games and talking a lot about games. That's why, some critics are, and it's just part of the differentiation. Some critics have commonalities with others. I remember writing my review for I'm blanking on the name. Tell Me Why, because that pop song. Tell Me Why, and I wrote it, and then I after I wrote it and the review was out, then I kind of read a few other people's reviews, and a few people had very similar comments to what I had. That's not because we like texted each other and said like, oh, well, we both agree this thing, but I remember being like, oh, that's really cool. Like this critic that I also respect, like had a similar reading, and they had a certain analysis of it that was the same as my perspective, or someone else had a different one because they had a different background. Like that just comes with the nature of being, I think, in the industry for a while, where you will hear a lot of the same comments from some critics because, surprise, like we can be similar people despite being different.
Yeah, and like it is so funny to me how quickly people are like, whenever a game that people really were excited about, everyone jumps to the conclusion of like, oh, like all the critics hated this game because like it's some campaign to hate on the publisher or whatever. Where it's just like, well, maybe they just gave the game to a number of people and they all just came to kind of similar conclusions about it, like, which is like the thing that is usually the case.
Yeah. Joseph Dowdy says, Geronimo, MinnMaxers, my brother and I are wannabe adrenaline junkies. We've been skydiving, and in a few weeks, we're free diving with sharks. Good God. Get out of there, Joseph. Have any of you ever participated in anything you would call extreme? If not, would you ever consider it? I think a MinnMax Goes skydiving feature would be very cool. Joseph, that would be very fun. You're in luck, Joseph, because if you want a sliver of that, we literally did a feature back at Game Informer called Game Informer Goes Skydiving. So if you go to Game Informer's YouTube channel and search skydiving, you can see me scared S-less jumping out of a plane if you're into that.
Oh my gosh.
Is it weird that the first thing I thought of was like doing an ad read as we're skydiving of like cutting to like, how does this whole thing operate? And then like cut to you on a plane and we
literally throw Ben Hansen out of a plane.
You're doing all of like the ad reads for everything and yeah, talking about like all the features you unlock of the Patreon as you're skydiving.
That would honestly make me feel a lot less nervous about going if I had like a job to do. Like, okay, before I hit the ground, hopefully smoothly, I need to get out the entire plug for the Call Me By Your Game podcast, or else they're going to be pissed.
Why did y'all go skydiving? Just like for the vibes? Like, was that?
Why?
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah, well, I'm a huge coward. And so like that was planned for a long time. And I was like, well, I'm going to go along, but there's no universe where I'm actually going to go skydiving. And then we had breakfast before, and it was at that breakfast that I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And it was like the best way to do it because then I wasn't dreading it for like months. It's like I had very little time to dread it before I was just in the plane, no way out. Well, technically, I guess you could say you didn't want to go, but they were diabolical because they told us that like, okay, the parachute is set to pop at this altitude. So even if you black out, if both you and your instructor black out or whatever, the parachute will still go off. But then they said that like, and that's why you need to jump, because if you stay in the plane, the parachute will go off and it'll be a disaster as the plane's like descending. And now that I think about it, that makes zero sense, but that's what they told us. That's like a nice way to get our asses out the door.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, that has to be a placebo of like, like just to something to calm you down of like, yeah, you'll be fine.
Yep.
No, but seriously, pull the cord when you
Yeah.
I'm excited to watch this. It's only 4 minutes long. Also, I think it's hilarious because it's a 2012 video.
Yeah.
And Tim Turry, I don't know Tim Turry personally, has a Sewer Meat Boy shirt on. I'm like, this is such a 2012 video.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, we make a lot of references to the first season of The Walking Dead in that video as well.
Yeah, you can really sense the era that you're in.
Yeah, but it's like, I think skydiving falls into that camp with a couple other things. It's like, what are you going to do? Just die and never jump out of a plane? It seems like something that you should experience because it's available. It's not that expensive. It's like, I always tell...
I'm going to die because I jumped out of a plane.
I'm going to jump out of a plane and die.
No,
what's gonna happen.
you'll
current
be...
philosophy of, I don't want to die in a way that's too dumb.
That'd be the coolest way to die.
God, what happened? And then people have to explain that I jumped out of a plane on my own volition out of no need.
You're giving them a good story.
Yeah, that's a best case scenario. It's like, what, okay, yeah, you know what, decapitated by a bus. Like, is that less embarrassing somehow than jumping out of a plane? That'd be the coolest way to die.
I feel like my ancestors would be like, this is a real way to go of all the things that you could have gone. I don't know. That's also, I'm too worried something bad would happen. Like, with this $100 something insurance, I don't know if I'd do it, but I'm not going to ever say never because I'm sure at some point, maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I'm one of those people who just always imagines that the worst possible thing is always going to happen. So it wouldn't be in like oh, this is so tragic. It's just like, oh, great. Of course the cord rips while I'm jumping. Of course this happens to me and then I die.
I love the idea of your last thought being bitter.
Yeah. I'll die mad. Literally what's going to happen.
He died the way he lived, annoyed and agitated.
Kyle, here's what you should do. You should, this summer, just call your brother up and say, I have booked us tickets to go skydiving, and we're going on Tuesday. Let's go. Like, it'd be the most memorable thing you've done together for years.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
I
it
feel
could be the most
like
memorable thing you do, period.
You're not
Branson's getting to cut off the skydiving thing. It's like, use my promo code Ben at checkout.
Please do. Actually, it's fun. The person that we went skydiving with, the person that ran the skydiving place that we went to for that video, turns out they were involved in a gigantic drug ring. And I forget what it's called, but there's a whole podcast series about their drug ring. And they were using that plane that we jumped out of to like smuggle drugs from Colorado and stuff. It's crazy.
What?
You got the whole introduction, like, all right, hey everyone, like, okay, I'm gonna give you the instructions. My name is El Chapo. We're gonna have a whole thing. It's gonna be fun.
Can you imagine if he
Don't
was
worry
like,
about
oh my
these
God,
extra boxes.
I can't believe someone actually booked this. This is just a front.
Yeah,
Let's take him
exactly.
up there.
Oh crap, we gotta learn how to do this.
$15 and said, well, at some point we're gonna be crossing the border at some point, so don't worry about that. We'll be jumping later.
Talk about multiple streams of income, you know?
It's true. Yeah, it was a good system they had until, the law caught up with them. But now who's laughing? Because they get to be the star of a podcast series. Everybody's dream.
Yeah.
Jordan Blaney. But hang on, Kyle, would you ever go skydiving? I feel like you wouldn't be fully opposed to it.
I don't know.
like
Yeah,
Returnal?
that's kind of where I'm at. Not fully opposed, not as opposed as these guys, but like it's not on my bucket list or anything.
I think you being a parent kind of tilts the calculus against it because it's like for us, we don't have kids. Like if we die, that's just a fun story that people get to tell about us. Whereas you leave people behind.
You guys are acting like there's a 20% chance you'll die. You're more likely to die on the car ride to the parachute place than the actual skydive.
Well, I work from home now, so
Oh yeah, I guess that's true.
we're really taking out all the challenges here.
Yeah, don't leave your house. Jordan Blaney writes in and says, why does it seem like most video games based on anime or manga end up being a fighting game? I'd love to see a grid-based My Hero Academia RPG. It's a very good specific request. Can y'all think of other ways?
There's a mobile game coming out that looks maybe might be what you're looking for, but I think because I run into that a lot too. I watch a lot of anime. I like anime. I like video games based on anime, but the problem is if you look at something like My Hero Academia, which is a great show that I love, like it's about super powered characters who fight each other.
Yeah.
I mean that's kind of what it is, like I always get bummed when it's like, oh, a My Hero game. Oh, it's like a fighting game. Like I get that a lot with various anime that I enjoy, but at the same time I'm like, yeah, all right, I get it. It makes sense, like thematically,
It is the easiest genre for the things that people like about those series to come through. Of like, here's a lot of exaggerated characters with a lot of cool powers that are like that frequently go up against each other, right? Like they're like in a My Hero Academia RPG, like who are the fighter enemies, right? Like how does that work? Like you have to think about that structure a lot more if you go outside that genre. My problem is that it's always the wrong kind of fighting games. That it's always like the 3D kind of like arena battle fighting games. That it's so very rarely the Dragon Ball fighters, although that's becoming more common now. But
I like that you just call them the wrong type of fighting games, 3D fighters.
Well, yeah, like 3D, like there's a difference between something like Tekken and those My Hero games. Like that specific type of genre game, I feel like I just never, I don't think they figured that genre out in a way that is like breaking through beyond like, oh, I like the show and I played this and I thought it was fun. But yeah, it feels like the easiest genre to map that kind of like shonen anime thing onto.
I think one of my favorite examples in like talking about reviews and reviewing them in a silo, like I will forever be one of, if not the highest review score on it, but One Piece World Seeker, which was an open world action game that gave you Luffy's ability to stretch his arms and like fling yourself around this open island. Like that was the best like thing that could have been done with that IP, I think, like I would much rather play that than a One Piece fighting game,
Yeah. It's just like it seems like not that they're cheap or easy, but I think making a full RPG is a tall order compared to let's make a fighting game.
Also, especially shonen anime is so character focused.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the fun thing about it is like learning about all these characters and what makes them unique, and that's great fodder for fighting games.
Yeah. Fred DeNovo submits a question over on Patreon asking, do you have any games that you wished you had played sooner? Either back when they were in the zeitgeist or maybe an earlier game in the series that is hard to go back to with improvements made in the sequels. My example is that I wish I played Undertale when it first came out. That game is Charm Incarnate. So yeah, a game you wish you played sooner.
So for me, it's basically the full genre of like 16-bit RPGs. Like I was at a friend's house just going through all their games, and they had Final Fantasy, I think Mystic Quest, and I played it like in the middle of their save, and I was like, you can't jump. There's no like levels. You just walk around, and then you have to do menu selection. This sucks. And like for years, it turned me off of the idea until I eventually found like Super Mario RPG, and then I found Earthbound, and then I found Chrono Trigger and played but never beat Final Fantasy VI, and it was very much like, I wish I had understood the value of why these games were interesting when I was younger. Like, because I liked story in games. I would have loved these. But my first taste was so bad that it turned me off for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good one. I mean, I got into console gaming so late that I feel like so many of those could have been wrapped up. Like, oh man, if I played Chrono Trigger right when it came out, my body would be lined with Chrono Trigger tattoos. Like I would be all in on the game instead of just like really loving it like I do now. But yeah, it's not the best example. I was thinking of Metal Gear Solid 1. It felt like an eternity, and I was really late to the party. In reality, it was like I didn't play it until the year 2000, right when I got my PS2. So it was like 2 years after it came out. But it felt like, oh, this old game, I guess I'll finally get around to this. And then it just blew my freaking mind, even though it was, last gen at that time. But I remember I didn't play it because I was a diehard GameSpot fan, and their review was like lower than most. And so it was a combo of Jeff Gerstmann giving it an 8.5, which in my mind was like, trash, only play 9s and above, cool child stuff. But then I remember also like the header image, I think it was like the title screen or something. It was just like, this looks so boring. I don't even know what I'm looking at here. And boy, was I stupid. But I'm still angry at Jeff Gerstmann for not giving it a higher score. But I understand.
Then an 8.5?
For Metal Gear Solid 1?
Cyril's review energy is coming out strong.
For Metal Gear Solid 1.
I believe the name under the review said great.
Yeah, but still.
I feel like you didn't mean it, though. I'm like, excuse you.
Well, I remember he's even talked about it. He's talked about it in the Bombcast about like, it's short if you skip all the cutscenes, and it's a lot of cutscenes, which I totally understand. But Cyril, can you imagine playing Metal Gear Solid for the first time and give it an 8.5?
I mean, I didn't even play it until like they had that PS2 collection a long time ago, which I feel bad about having sold. But like, I remember that game being, that is also a game that I wish I could have played, because I think a lot of the stuff about that game that is very interesting I had spoiled for me by then, like, oh yeah, the Psycho Mantis thing where he like moves your controller. I think that would have broken my mind had I played it, on an original PlayStation. For
Right. But yeah, does anybody else have another one that they wish they played sooner?
All of them.
What's that?
Yeah.
All of them, all the games.
Yeah.
No, honestly, like I feel like I'm constantly trying to like go back and then keep up with now, and then go back and like fill in some gaps. And it's like I'm building a house on a foundation that I'm also building, but not literally, because I don't think you need to like have played older games to be able to criticize current games. But yeah, I wish I could go back to my childhood and be like, this is what you're going to do, and you will do it so much better and have so much more to say, if you can believe that's possible, if you just start playing everything.
Yeah.
Just start playing everything.
For sure. Ryan Fauci.
I want to hear Cyril's. I cut him off.
Oh, yeah. This is like a much smaller example, but I think 13 Sentinels is a game I wish I had played last year, so I could have talked about it more towards the end of the year, because I feel I played it like January of 2021. That definitely would have come up for more if I had played it then, because I think it is one of my favorite games of last year.
Oh wow, there it is.
I was up late with my wife. We were chatting, and she had this moment. She was kind of quiet, and then she's like, "You know what? I keep thinking about 13 Sentinels. I think it's one of my favorite games of all time."
Wow.
Like she was like ready to like put it up on top of that list. Like she was just, it was like this sort of like, you know what? I'm ready to admit it. I think it's one of my favorites ever.
The thought I keep coming back to with that game is that it feels like they crammed the entirety of the Metal Gear series into one game with the foresight to actually plan it out ahead of time. That is how wild that game is.
It's a Metal Gear day.
Yeah. Well, every day's a Metal Gear day here.
Every day's a Metal Gear day, yes.
Ryan Fauci says, "Hey, MinnMax I have a question for Janet. I'm also a former English teacher." By the way, Janet, the name Janet.
Yes.
What do people bring up a lot with that? Do people have like good cultural touchstones? I'm not even fishing for one in particular, but like, I think it's an interesting name that we've never talked about.
And yeah, like what people like nickname wise or troll wise, like
yeah,
what
nickname
people would
wise,
say.
or do people like? Is there a famous Janet I'm not thinking of? That,
Janet Jackson,
of course,
that was the main one I got a lot. Interplanet Janet, and that song that goes, "Damn it, Janet, I love you." I've never watched Rocky Horror Picture Show. Stop telling that to me. Everyone, just don't say any of those things to me. I've heard them so many times, and people always act like it's the first time that anyone's ever said it. But those are the three. Those are the three. Janet Jackson, Rocky Horror Picture, Interplanet Janet.
Who's Chandler's girlfriend and
Janice. Completely different. Yeah.
Yes. I lucked out. Just barely slipped by.
Really dodged it. You must have been horrified on behalf of children of America and also yourself personally during like the Janet Jackson Super Bowl thing, because you're like, oh no, now Janet is back in the news, like, and I have to deal with this name comparison.
People didn't mention it. I feel like I'm not even sure. People wouldn't even mention it in any comparative way. I mean, I don't sing or anything, nor do I do other things that happen to Janet Jackson. But no, people would just say it more like like Janet Jackson. Like it was kind of just like a fun fact for people. So But yeah, I did hear that a lot.
Yeah, this is dumb. I always think of Damn It, Janet, but I always think of there was a Family Guy episode called that, but that's a Rocky Horror reference. Is it?
Yeah, I mean, it could be Family Guy. Like pulling on Rocky. Yeah, like it's a song from Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Okay,
Damn it, Janet, I love you. I don't know how the rest goes. That's all anyone ever says to me.
And you can make Janet sing it if you support MinnMax at the $50 tier with your custom thank you video. Anyways, Ryan Foshi writes in, let me get to the question, y'all. He says, I'm a former English teacher in the middle of a career shift. Did Janet ever bring your love of games into the classroom? One of my favorite memories was when we had a field day at the middle school and one of my kids brought his Switch. I picked up a pair of Joy-Cons and we proceeded to have one-on-one battles in Smash. Oh, that sounds lovely.
Yeah, that's really cute. Absolutely. I had so at my high school that I taught at, we had like seminar days essentially where as a teacher, you would host like one or two seminars, students sign up for it. I had one that was like a study hall period and then one that was like nerd club, and it was mostly gaming, but like faculty kind of want to like make it more generalized. So I'm like, you can game or just do your nerd stuff. You got cards, you want to draw, as long as it's not like creepy or weird. Yeah, just chill out. And I brought in like so much like stuff. Like I brought in a bunch of like monitor, like little TVs to set up. I brought in like my Switch, some older stuff, like someone donated a 360 to me. So I like brought that in and just kind of set up these little stations. And it was awesome. Like the kids played, they were really into the Wii U and they played a lot of 3D World. I don't think I have this video anymore, unfortunately. And it didn't have any, students in it for obvious reasons because they're minors, but I had a recording of them playing, like just the screen, and you could hear them in the background playing, and they were doing is it called Victory Road? That super hard area in 3D World.
Yeah.
They were playing that. You can imagine how that went. And they were like, no, Luigi! Like it was complete chaos, and they had such a good time with it. And I really loved, being able to bring in those insights, show them stuff they never had played before. Like, I think like they asked about, like the NES controller. They're like, oh, why doesn't it have like rumble in it, or some like weird questions that you wouldn't think of. Or I remember them playing the PSP for the first time and trying to open the UMDs, which I also did when I was a kid because I didn't understand what a UMD was. Little stuff like that. And just overall, I really liked it as a way to teach kids how to be good to each other. I know the gaming community obviously can be very contentious, but I think learning how to be good about playing games is so beneficial to sharing, being good at winning, being good at losing, being good at taking turns, being good at like including people who maybe aren't as skilled as you, especially in games where you could be really awesome or kind of a beginner. So, I really tried to focus it on that. And a lot of middle school and a little bit of the high school kids, they got really into, I showed them this indie game called Kid Trip. It's like a platformer on Switch. It's pretty hard. So I was like, let's see if anyone can beat this game. It's like a very short game. And I'm like, if anyone can beat the game, I'll give them a prize of, I think like $1 or like $5. And one of the kids, because the game was less than $5, one of the kids bought the game, trained at home, and was like, I've been practicing all week. God. And they came in and they beat the game, and they were so proud. And we took like a little picture of them and their little prize. Like, yeah, they were adorable. And I had a blast doing that. And then fun side, I also at a summer camp taught game design for a brief period. Very simple though, drag and drop coding, but they made like fake Pong, fake Pac-Man, different like little stuff.
Yeah, you're legally required to call it fake Pong, fake Pac-Man. Otherwise,
fake Pong. No,
they'd kick down the frickin' door.
Dumb Pac-Man, you called it.
Another Pac-Man game? Yeah, we were making Pac-Man 99 before anyone. It was wild.
Smart.
No, this was Mrs. Pac-Man. This one's married. Legally distinct.
MRS.
Yeah.
John
Like,
Skovic.
don't tag Nintendo in these.
John Skovic says, all right, MinnMax, you're at a diner / general American food / buffet sort of place, and the only menu item is appetizer sampler. Now, this sounds like my kind of restaurant. What are the 3 appetizers you'd want to be included? They have everything and it's all good. You don't need to consider making the whole table happy or anything. This is just for you. So ideal 3 appetizers on an appetizer sampler.
This is maybe the most controversial one, but I think a lot of places will offer you wings sometimes as an appetizer. So I think that one is good enough to be a meal sometimes. So I think that one should go on there.
I agree. I'm offended on behalf of wings. I'm a big wings fan whenever it's lumped into that appetizer realm, because it disincentivizes me from wanting wings in some way, where it's like, well, I know they'd fill me up, but it's in this section of the menu, so maybe it isn't going to be like hearty enough.
I don't think I've ever gone into a restaurant and said like, I'll have a thing of wings and a hamburger. Like that is that is way too much. But I think the idea is that you're supposed to share them, so it's almost like just having them on the appetizer menu is that like, get some wings, but like not all of them, like share them a bit, you know, like give each person like 1 or 2 wings, right?
Okay. Hey, are we making our communal? Maybe this is the way to go. Let's figure out.
We can all add a few, I guess.
Yeah, but
they're
like
all-
only 3 allowed.
I love some sliders, like burger sliders. I love.
yeah, it's good.
No.
Can't give me a
What?
face.
That's what a
They're
burger's
small
for. Don't
fingers.
get a
That's
smaller
wrong with you.
version of a better thing for your appetizer.
I support small
Thank
burgers.
you.
They're
Yeah, it's
cute
easier
and they're
to eat.
delicious.
Yeah.
You can get different kinds of them too. You can only get one burger. I'm not
Yeah,
saying they're
different-
better than a single burger, but
Yeah.
the variety. When else can you eat like 4 different burgers?
Okay.
You can't.
Yeah, like
You
that's
can't.
that's when it comes to eating, like I would rather have like 3 smaller different burgers with different flavors than one I got to commit to this whole
Okay,
burger.
I know you're scared of commitment. Okay, what about this?
Yeah, I've only been married for over a decade.
300 years.
You've only made 2 of the biggest commitment a human being can make.
Own my house, have a child.
Yeah. The problem with sliders is it's too easy to think of them as a snack instead of like, I think you have like 2 or 3 sliders and that's effectively one burger. So it's like if you have 5 sliders, that's like too much.
Well, what
but it's
is-
like it's so easy to just have. I'll just have one more slider because it's like it's like a shot, right? Like you have one of them
burger shot.
and it doesn't feel significant until you've had like 6
Yeah.
of them and it's like suddenly it's way too
Well,
much.
cereal. What?
It's like cutting a donut in half and eating it like 20
And then-
minutes
and-
apart,
yeah,
and
and
then
then
you
eating
pretend
4
you
halves
haven't
of a
eaten a
donut,
full
yeah.
donut.
Right, right.
Exactly.
But as
you
a
gotta throw
wise
some
man,
chicken strips on there. What do you guys?
Oh.
How do you guys feel about spinach artichoke dip? You guys into that? I like that.
It hits. It does hit.
yeah.
You know what? Me and Kyle, we can just go eat by ourselves.
Yeah, these
you
are
and
all
me.
fun.
Let's-
Sliders.
I mean,
and our spinach
Sliders,
dip.
spinach
We're talking like Hall
Ben's
of,
jumping out of planes. We'll be in sliders.
Hall of Fame appetizer. You gotta have mozzarella sticks as one of the 3, right?
Oh, yes.
That is
Yep.
like,
Jalapeno
Yep.
poppers would be one of my 3.
ooh. Okay.
What?
No,
You know
I'm
what?
with
All
Janet.
right. Well,
I'll-
now
No
move
more.
to the
We're
other
not eating
booth.
together.
oh.
I think you need to have like a chips or chips equivalent,
Yes,
something
yes.
that lasts a long time.
See, this
That's
is
what the spinach dip
Because
does.
like if you bring out 4 sliders and like that's your appetizer, you eat what you each eat one per like one slider.
But
then
like
you're
y'all
done,
are
and
forgetting,
you're
this
still
is
waiting
a
for your food.
theoretical appetizer only restaurant. We're only us. Oh, we're the only ones eating the 3 appetizers.
Yeah, you're right. They
Like, I
did
mean, if we
say
want to
that.
each pick one, that's fine. But like it's not what do you order when you order appetizers. It's what are the 3 best appetizers.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you're really focusing on the text here over the questions, Janet. We appreciate it.
You got to.
I think it's like it seems weird to even call it an appetizer, but yeah, chips and salsa. I mean, that's top 3 food on planet Earth for my stupid tongue. So if that counts as an appetizer, that's got to be one of these. Yes.
That's a respectable choice.
Thank you.
Queso dip too.
Yeah.
With any
Fried
kind of
pickles?
Yeah.
Get out of here. How do?
I feel like nachos are good because I don't
yeah.
there's not a lot of context where I can even eat nachos.
Okay.
I literally
Kyle
like,
has disappeared. He's turned into audio.
he's like, you know
only.
what? I
I just
can't
broke
do this
the
anymore.
podcast trying to
He's
get
sublimated
Kyle.
into audio.
Oh crap! He made
yeah,
it
I
He went
back.
to go get some sliders. Yeah, because like nachos, you can only really eat them as an appetizer, or if you're at like a sporting event, maybe, or like the movies. Those are
Yeah.
kind of the only like. I'm not making nachos at home. Have you ever made like I have?
Oh, yeah.
I've made nachos at home, but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
definitely because I I want to add more to them than I think would be like socially acceptable at a restaurant.
Now, what about this? If this is, they say they're all good.
Yes.
What about you go for some gyoza, pot stickers? I mean,
I think you can eat a lot of them. Yeah,
that's up there. I don't think I've hit my
But
limit.
since it's like an American,
That's true. Pot
American
stickers
culture
are
is taking all other cultures, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like when you eat, like it's from everything. But when I think American, I think of like Denny's energy, like buffet energy. Which buffets have other cultural stuff, but that's why I wouldn't put pot stickers on there.
Yeah. I could see pot stickers at a buffet, but yeah, I hear you.
What kind of buffet is it? An American buffet? I feel like not an American buffet, like Old Country buffet, for instance.
You're saying
does anyone know what that buffet is? I don't actually know.
Oh yeah. So the question is,
Country buffet is,
do they have pot stickers at Old Country Buffet? That's the question.
I don't think so. Yeah,
I don't know.
like because I'm thinking like an American style place. Blooming Onion, someone said in the chat. Does that mean anything to anyone?
Yeah, that's Outback Steakhouse.
I was going to suggest that, but I think that's so specific to Outback Steakhouse that I don't know if we can get that there.
Yeah, I don't think
we can get some onion
place.
rings. We're close.
We can get whatever we want because it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
sure,
right.
Why not?
Then Bloomin' Onion. Bloomin' Onions, like 5 of those.
Hopefully we've made everybody very hungry listening to this, but I think we can all agree that we're locking it down on mozzarella sticks, chips and salsa, and pot stickers. I think there's just no more debate after that. That just has to be the group.
Also, you'd get so sick if you ate all of these. That's the other thing I was thinking of. I was like, we're eating these all at once because some of these combinations don't fit.
We'll make them fit. Now it's, we're going to choose our favorite. Kyle, what do you think? Question of the week.
I liked the appetizers one just now. We talked a lot about reviewing things in a silo.
Yeah, that's true. I like
games
that.
you wish you played. I like that one.
Yeah.
And then the gut-wrenching moments I think are good too. So
yeah, I
like games you wish you played. That's kind of where I'm leaning a little bit.
I like the adrenaline one. I like the reviews in a silo. I think that was the biggest conversation starter.
That was the biggest talker. Yeah.
Yeah, Janet, you lean in a direction.
You know what? I'm going to give it to the extreme question because I think it went the most surprising places.
That's true.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I think that sounds good. Cyril, you can live with that?
Yeah, I'll live with it for the rest of my life. No, yeah.
You're going to have to until you jump out of that plane.
That's the most extreme thing you've ever done is lived with this decision. Congratulations.
I mean, that is the most extreme thing people will do in their lifetimes is live with a heavy decision.
That is true. Great point. Let's all freak out a little bit. Joseph Dowdy, congratulations. You've won a mystery prize from I Am 8-Bit. They will ship that out to you soon. Thanks to everybody that submitted a question over on Patreon. If you support us at any tier, you can submit a question and win a wonderful prize from I Am 8-Bit in the future. And now it's time for something we like to call Get a Load of This. Surreal, what do you got, Big Papa?
Yeah, speaking of food and various sizes thereof, there's an account called Non-Standard McDonald's, which I think is a must-follow account.
Oh, yeah.
Show you here's like a weird area or restaurant that was retrofitted into a McDonald's, or like here's just this foreign McDonald's that just looks wild. But this is not about any of those. This is about last year in the midst of a pandemic, and people not going outside. I think there was this kind of small undercurrent of just like businesses doing really weird things. For example, the Non-Standard McDonald's account highlighted a Quarter Pounder memorial in Rapid City, South Dakota, that is just this huge statue of a Quarter Pounder with cheese, and it looks like what you imagine. Like here's like we're honoring, like
in memorial,
like the World War II memorial or something, and it's just like this bronze statue of the McDonald's Quarter Pounder.
That's amazing.
Well, hold on, is it a photo like advertisement Quarter Pounder or like Quarter Pounder you order and they hand to you at the restaurant?
It is like what it is how it looks in the ads. I think.
Okay.
This is maybe misrepresenting the Quarter Pounder a little bit, but apparently, this is from the Non-Standard McDonald's. It says after winning a countrywide competition, this Rapid City location was chosen as the home for this memorial honoring our national heritage.
That's beautiful.
And then it goes on to say, like critical information about the statue, which is I guess in the description. Wait before cooking 4 ounces. Statue is not edible. But I have to imagine a lot of these text it feels photoshopped, so maybe is not real. But yeah, the idea of like in 2020, McDonald's decided to create a statue for its hamburger is Very weird.
That is beautiful. I know we've been on a real kick here. Last Friday on MinnMax's YouTube channel, if you've never checked it out, go subscribe. We'd appreciate it. There's a lot of fun stuff on there. We released footage of a UFO sighting that I filmed in 2016 and talked a lot about kind of the resurgence of talking about UFOs and aliens and all that stuff is Kyle and I. Kyle, people come out of the woodwork, man. It is fascinating. When you release UFO footage, you start getting some emails, and like the amazing thing is so many of the YouTube
a lot
comments.
of people telling you that it's just lanterns.
A lot of people saying those are sky lanterns, you idiot, which is still debatable, but I appreciate the feedback. But then like so many people in the Discord are talking UFOs. It's very fun to see everybody sharing their stories in the comments and stuff. So anyways, my get a load of this is I stumbled across this video that's 8 minutes long, and it's of a UFO sighting in New York City, where it's just people on the streets of New York like looking up at these lights in the sky that are slowly rotating, and then like more come into play. But it was posted on October 15th, 2010, just 8 minutes of raw footage of this UFO sighting in downtown New York, and it was posted by CBS News. It's like a good timestamp of like, back in 2010, people didn't really know what to do with YouTube, so let's just upload 8 minutes of exclusive UFO footage on CBS News's channel. So the link's below for everybody if you want to look at some fun, weird things in the sky with the rest of us. Janet?
Yeah, so mine's a little bit, get a load of this. Mine's a little bit unconventional this week. I don't know if this is allowed, but I'm going to do it until someone stops me.
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing a lot of the Vita because I was on vacation. So I was like, that's what you do, Vita for vacation. And I went to the store on the Vita, which is still active. Yay. And I was looking at the top downloaded games. I think there's like about maybe 10 of them on here. Would y'all care to indulge me and try to guess the top 10 downloaded games on the Vita?
What's the time span? This is like this month or all time?
I think like as of now, it just says top downloads.
Sure,
like
probably
maybe
right
of all
now.
time. Of all time, I think.
Okay.
I
I'm
would,
going to lean
time.
some PlayStation
Okay.
Plus titles because I think those probably count, and say like Gravity Rush and maybe Uncharted would be on that list because those were free for a time.
no.
I'm going to guess, because you mentioned that you were playing it in our Monday meeting, I'm going to guess Sound Shapes.
Nah.
Oh, that's a travesty.
I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna go
I downloaded it though.
Good.
I'm gonna go with this is probably the easiest way to play original PlayStation games. So I'm gonna say Metal Gear.
No.
Chrono Cross?
It's actually not, in the most frustrating way. You have to download, you can buy Metal Gear Solid, then you have to download it on your PlayStation 3, and then you have to transfer it from your PlayStation 3 to your Vita. It's embarrassing how hard it is. Guacamelee?
Nope.
What? I thought it was such a good guess. I'm trying to think, the iconic versions of like, okay, what games are people choosing to play on Vita?
Chat said Killzone Mercenary. That's also no.
Oh.
But chat, you're welcome to, if you're watching live, try to guess.
Yeah.
I feel like y'all can at least get some of these.
You would think so. Can you get
I believe.
A FIFA, maybe?
Nope.
An NBA, a Madden?
Nope. No sports.
Peace Walker?
No, like regular sports. There's something that maybe there's a fighting game on here. If you need a hint, I can also give hints.
Yeah, give a
Kombat.
hint.
No.
Street Fighter Cross Tekken.
Yes.
Nice.
All right.
Call of Duty
I knew
Black
that was
Ops
a big Vita
Declassified.
No, but
Okay.
chat said Persona 4 Golden's on here.
Oh, of
God,
course.
Chat said
embarrassing.
Hotline Miami
Sports.
also on here.
Oh,
Chat's
Hotline
killing it.
Miami.
That's where I played Hotline
All
Miami.
right.
Damn it.
I think let's just go for a few. I'd like y'all to get like at
Legacy?
least maybe one more. Nope.
Okay, give us a hint, Janet.
This game is on virtually everything.
Minecraft.
And yes.
All right.
Do you want another hint?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This game still has is still an active franchise today.
Yeah.
This game is a PlayStation exclusive game.
Active franchise.
This game involves I don't want to go too obvious. This game had games on the PS3, on the
Big
PSP. Nope. This game involves a sad dad.
God of War collection.
Yes.
Oh,
there you go.
wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Dad.
This game is a game that I would download on the PS Vita.
Jack and Daxter collection.
Yes.
Because the God of War, that's a PSP game. So
Yeah, I think it might have some
the Grand Theft
crossover.
Autos on there. Vice City Stories, Liberty
No,
City
there's no
Stories?
Grand Theft Auto on there. I played this in my household as well. We can edit there. I can read the ones that were missing. I think there is crossover with the PSP store for if that changes anything
Yeah,
for
I mean,
you.
God of War is on there. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's
no. Sorry, the God of War collection on Vita is like God of War 1, right?
No,
I think
the
so,
one
yeah,
is
because-
like the two PSP games, isn't it?
it says God
Is
of
it?
War
Okay.
Collection PS Vita. I could click into it and read more of the SKU. It's $15 if that helps. But like other ones that were on here were God Eater 2 Rage Burst,
Oh,
course.
weird.
Salt
Okay.
and Sanctuary,
Okay. Yeah, I played that on
Borderlands
Vita.
2,
Yep.
a game that
started
recently
that on
got ported
Vita.
to Switch that I know some of us have played.
Miitopia.
Fez.
Fez, yes, Fez,
Okay.
and then Hotline Miami as mentioned.
Wow.
But yeah, those are
weird
anyway. But I
grouping.
played this with my household too, and like a lot of people did guess GTA and stuff like that. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. Like some of those did feel like, oh yeah, I should have remembered that, and then a few
Yeah.
really surprised me. So I don't know. Maybe this is where I'll start the rest of my Vita journey. But I thought that was
That's
interesting.
good. Unfortunately, Janet, that's not allowed for Get a Load of This.
Well, it is
will
too
be
late.
stricken
'cause I have
from
nothing
the
else to
record.
offer. I have no backup.
Serial, did you have one?
Yeah, I had
Yeah, the
the quarter pounder one.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Kyle,
Yeah. Kyle, did
can
you
you say
go
it
already?
again?
So get a lot of that.
Kyle, did you go? Am I missing?
No.
Okay, you go then, Kyle.
Do you want to hear it? Do you
Yes,
care?
I do.
Yes.
You want to hear
always.
serials again? Would you rather
It'd
do
be
that?
nice if you would be so kind.
Hey, get a load of this. This is a YouTube video uploaded in 2011, but it's from an interview that's much older than that. It has 1.8 million views, and it's an old interview with a young Bill Gates, where for some reason the person interviewing him asks him if he can jump over a chair, and he confirms that he can in fact jump over a chair.
Yeah.
And then he gets up and jumps over the chair that he was sitting in.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
How did you stumble
Yeah.
across this again? Was it just like Bill Gates is in the news for philandering
Pretty much.
around?
I'd never seen it. Someone was like, "Oh, this reminds me. All this Bill Gates stuff reminds me of the time he jumped over a chair." I was like, "What?" And it's
Yeah.
like an 18-second video of him being like, "Yeah, I'm Bill Gates. I can jump over a chair. Watch this."
That's really funny.
It was
That's
weird
good
because I think
content.
at one point I made a Smurf account to play Dota with my friends because I had played so much of it that I like, you know, they would just get completely trashed. So the best way would be to just make a new Steam account. And my username was depends on the size of the chair, which is a line he says in that video. and my icon back when it was cool to like kind of like billionaires in this way before we kind of find out they all kind of suck, was like this picture of Bill Gates, and it just my username was depends on the size of the chair.
Yeah.
That's right up there with Ellie Can Swim from the stream the other day.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Now Ellie can swim. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, Ellie can swim now.
For Knockout City in that stream on our YouTube channel. Hey, the community shares Get a Load of This is all the time in the Discord, and this is a format that's been done to death, but I still love it every once in a while to put things in perspective. Toby, aka Random Gammer, shared this tweet from Chris Chapman saying that on May 23rd, 2021, Skyrim is as old as Morrowind was on Skyrim's release day. Isn't that an insane thing to think about?
Time keeps moving.
Time, it just like
thought-
keeps moving.
Oh wait,
Yeah, what's with that?
Morrowind and Sky. And
So
Sky-
Morrowind and Skyrim,
Oh, I
yeah,
thought it was. I
we're
would say it was
closer.
Oblivion and Skyrim, and I was like, really? That feels factually wrong. But no, Morrowind makes a lot more sense.
yeah, it has turns out been a long time since Skyrim came out. 10 years.
Yeah,
It's a
I
wild
mean,
thing think
to be
about.
fair, like back then, all they made was Elder Scrolls. They hadn't made a Fallout game, and since then they've made 2 Fallout games.
Two and a half.
But that is kind of interesting to think about, and also I think it has a lot to
Three,
do with.
actually.
Right.
But like the fact that games are so much harder to make now, and they require so many people. It's like I think the release dates between entries is getting way longer now as
Yeah.
a whole.
Yeah, Serial, stop thinking too much about this. It's just supposed to be one of those, whoa, we're old things. So just if
Yeah.
you could relish that, we'd appreciate it.
Whoa.
Thanks. Thanks,
We're
Janet.
old.
You're welcome.
Let's see. Coming up this week at MinnMax, we have our bonus episode of MinnMax Council, which is our Patreon exclusive podcast that we post every single Monday. The last Sunday of every month, we have a call-in episode. So if you support us at the $20 tier, the MinnMax Council tier, you can call in and podcast with us about whatever you'd like. We take all calls from everybody at that $20 tier. So it's not too late. So if you're listening to this, you can call in. But here's the catch. It's not happening on Sunday because of Memorial Day weekend. We're recording it on Thursday. So if you're listening to this early and you want to jump up to that $20 tier, you can call in to MinnMax Council and talk to myself and Sarah Podzorski, MinnMax's streaming compatriot. And you can talk to us about whatever you'd like. Your favorite game of all time, a game you're playing now, some deep cut from MinnMax, some question about our future. We'll take it all. So thanks everybody for the support, and thanks everybody who jumps up to that $20 tier just for 1 month. Give it a whirl. Also, we had an interview that went live earlier this week with Giles Goddard, who is a name you might not be familiar with, but he's had an absolutely fascinating career where he was a programmer on Star Fox. He was then brought internal to Nintendo, where he worked on 1080 as a programmer, the N64 game. He is the guy who came up with the opening to Super Mario 64, the big Mario face that you can adjust and tweak. And so it's a fun interview where he talks a lot about working with Miyamoto that closely, working within Nintendo, some old stories about Nintendo in the 90s, the brutal crunch that it took for the programmers to actually get Mario 64 out the door, the history of the N64 controller, and he tells this fascinating story about working on the earliest prototype for Legend of Zelda on the 64, where he created portals, much like the game Portal, where they're like crystals that you can move around in Hyrule Castle to like see through and then jump to a different location, which was a fun tidbit. So you can check that out on MinnMax's YouTube channel or support us at the $5 tier on Patreon to unlock the podcast version of that interview. All of our interviews, the deepest dive, like Mass Effect's deepest dive, which is happening right now. So you can unlock the podcast version of that. The next episode is going to be coming up next week. So we're covering on Monday, what is that? Yeah, May 31st, we're covering Artemis Tau, Noveria, and Pharos in that game. So play through those sections and then submit a comment and we'll read it for the second discussion there. Let's see, Kyle, anything else I'm forgetting?
Deepest Dive on Friday. Not Deepest Dive, I'm sorry. Max Spoilers.
Yeah.
Returnal. Me and Jacob Geller and Grant Bulmer.
Yeah, Star of Hitman 3
Talk
Grant.
about Returnal, the ending, the secret ending. Great game, great story.
There it is.
Won't say more than that.
Also, we hit 2,500 supporters on Patreon, which has been our goal for so long. So thanks to everybody who has supported us to get us closer and closer to that goal. We hit it, which means we're going to be recording commentary tracks for the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, the extended editions. It's going to be a marathon, but we're going to rotate through cohorts and more to create commentary tracks for those. And those will be coming up in the near future. So our sincerest thanks to everybody who supported us and let us hit that goal. That's fantastic. We really appreciate it. And if you have ideas for our next goal, leave a comment. Jump in the Discord. Let us know. We'd love to hear it. That'd be fun. All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching or listening, and especially thanks to MinnMax's $50 supporters. If you support us to the $50 tier, you can get your name read on every episode of the podcast and also get a custom thank you video from all of us. So thank you to Fixture Gaming, Call Me By Your Game Podcast, I'm 8-Bit, Rainmaker.gg, Mirko Arico-Torreno, Zachary Pligge, BeatenDownBrian, Andrew Uerkwitz, Jawarhello, Real AF TV, Mark Seliga, Ludwig Roque, PrettyGoodPrinting.com, Andrew Vala, Yarrow, SpiralInYourEyes, Richard Smuts, Clint Farley, Spider Dan, Preetham Yarlagadda, Clayton Myers, Starkiller, Steve Bamdad, Jesse Vitelli, and SlyckNic. Thank you so much, everybody. Be good, have fun, let's go.